Chapter 1154. Facing Yinluo's gentle and obedient smile, Sun Lang also smiled. But his smile was a little stiff. Yes, you'll be able to see Pingyang soon. So what do you mean? Don't mess around. You can't beat her. And that's not the main point. You're not as eloquent as Miss Zhao. That's not your character. Don't do something that's not in line with your character. Do you want to show her who's boss? Pingyang was very honest. She did not know how to speak and was introverted. At the very least, she would complain loudly and jump up and down when she was teased. She would only respond weakly, like a little deer, and would even hide at the side and cry. So, forget it, F***. Why should I care about this kind of thing? Xin Yaohua's matter hasn't been dealt with yet. Am I panicking? Catgirl's matter hasn't been dealt with yet. Am I panicking? Kunan's matter hasn't been dealt with yet. Am I panicking? And Bah. Anyway, I'm not panicking about these things. Why should I panic about such a small matter? He showed a calm expression. What's there to be afraid of? Don't be afraid. This kind of situation is simple. History is like a mirror, reflecting the results of all problems. Many of the problems faced by human beings have long been indicated in the vast history books. History has told us more than once that when internal conflicts are difficult to resolve, but must be resolved, the only solution is to provoke external conflicts, thus diverting or suppressing internal conflicts. So, how do you solve this kind of internal conflict that affects your lifestyle? The answer is simple. Use external conflicts to shift and cover it up. How do you stir up external conflicts? The answer is also simple. Fight the emperor. As long as they hit the emperor, it would be fine. As long as they hit the emperor, it would be fine. Look, I'm having a fierce battle with a terrifying imperial power. My life is on the line. I'm using the world as a chessboard and the common people as a bet. I'm fighting for this bright world. I'm so great and noble. How can you be so shameless to make a fuss over such trivial matters? Yes, perfect. Don't panic. Steady, at least for now. Yinluo is gentle and kind, while Pingyang is shy and introverted. They're both good people who stand aloof from worldly affairs. How can they hurt each other when they're together? They'll only love each other. Steady. Sun Lang thought happily. Apart from him, everyone else in the carriage fell into deep thought. Everyone had their own thoughts and plans. It was mainly because Sun Lang had revealed too many important things today, especially the many secrets related to Sun Lang and the nation-protecting Sword Saint. The real Sword Saint of the Earth Hutu was surrounded and killed by the imperial court in the Great Desolate Mountain, and then disappeared. The unknown Princess Pingyang played the role of the Sword Saint of the nation for 2 years. For Lu Shujin and Zhao Yunlong, although this was a big secret, it was not shocking enough. It was unexpected and reasonable. For Zhang Yinluo and Zhao Feihuang, although this secret was shocking enough, it seemed that there was no value in knowing it. Even if they told it to others, they didn't know who to tell. Only Kirill, the undying Li Huamao Zi of the Empress Mother Earth. Today, she could be said to have a great time listening to this. The Empire's biggest scandal had come out of Sun Lang's mouth, as if nothing had happened. After some processing, it would definitely become a super big news that would shock the world for 50 years. If this information was sent back to St. Yuri Castle, His Majesty the Emperor would go crazy with joy, she murmured. Are you really not going to Lihua? You'll definitely receive an unprecedented grand reception from the church. With the information and secrets you have, plus your own talent and value, I think the church will not be stingy with the title of saint. Really? Zhao Yunlong said lightly. What does Sun Lang want? Does he need the emperor to give it to him? What he said today had entered your ears. It's better for you to keep it in your heart. Courier just lost her composure because of excitement. After all, she had dug out a big secret that was enough to shake the order and reputation of the empire. For a leader of a foreign reactionary force like her, it was a great opportunity that she had yearned for even in her dreams. But after the excitement, she calmed down. Without solid evidence, no witnesses, and no cooperation from Sun Lang, even if this secret information was sent back to St. Yuri Castle, it wouldn't have the effect it should have. Even if the emperor made it public, it would only be for show. Maybe it would give the Empire an excuse to attack. She seemed to understand why Sun Lang casually revealed this big secret. Hutu was an invincible country. It was a behemoth that suppressed everything. Such a country was the ultimate combination of violence, desire, ambition, and evilness of human beings. It was the most terrible monster in the world. The existence of such a monster in the world meant uncountable harm, sorrow, and sin. Just like how beasts would trample on innocent ants without knowing it. The existence of such a huge and powerful country would definitely cause countless tragedies unintentionally and cause uncountable malice and dissatisfaction. How could such a monster that lived in curses, malice, schemes, and conspiracies be afraid of the attack of rumors? Yes, rumors. Sun Lang was the Saint Swordsman of the Empire. The Saint Swordsman of the Empire was betrayed and besieged in the Great Desolate Mountain. The Saint Swordsman of the Empire who returned to the capital with endless glory was a fake. These were not facts. As long as there was no evidence and no proof, they were all rumors. Rumors couldn't hurt a monster like the Empire. Only iron-like facts could hurt it. Only facts could hurt it. Only facts could hurt it. Only fact could break it. Only facts could disgrace it. And the only person who could do this was Sun Lang. Only he could turn an illusory rumor into an ironclad fact, a fact that everyone acknowledged, a fact that the monster could not ignore. Evidence and truth were divine swords that could cut through anything, but only the most powerful person could wield this divine sword. Only the most powerful person could turn this illusory sword into an unparalleled sharpness, piercing through the monster's shameless shell and piercing through its heart in one fell swoop. Only he could do it. Courier, who realized this, began to tremble slightly. She was excited. It was right to stay in the Empire. It was right to go to the capital with them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the chance to see all this. It has nothing to do with country origin. It has nothing to do with duty or loyalty. It's just my personal selfishness. She stood up from this relatively small space station and then solemnly half-knelt before Sun Lang, like a knight swearing allegiance to her monarch. Since I can remember, the monks and nuns of the Academy of Holy Precepts have told us to remember that in the south of the divine power of flames covered by frost, but with an undying fire, there is an awe-inspiring country called the Hutu Empire. In the world of martial arts, it is the biggest imaginary enemy of the fire of flames. It is the obstacle to the glory of the church. It is a powerful country that we want to catch up with, but can never catch up with. The one who knows you best will always be your enemy. The one who knows the Empire best is us. The more we know, the more scared, shaken, and powerless we are. More than once, we have wondered if we can never catch up with the Empire, if we can never defeat that behemoth. She showed a fanatical expression. She looked at Sun Lang as if she saw a legend. But today, who would have thought that the invincible Hutu Empire, the martial arts country that seems invincible, has a person who has the power to subvert and change it? Until today, I am convinced that you can really do it, challenging the most horrible war group in the world with your own strength. It turns out that someone can really do it. She lowered her head and said in an unprecedentedly solemn tone, "No matter what you want to do, no matter what your purpose is, no matter how far you want to go, I beg you, please use my power. Please allow me to participate. Please allow me to see. For a warrior, this is the glory of a lifetime." Before Sun Lang could say anything, Zhao Yunlong, who was at the side, complained, "Hey Mao, do you fire people often make such a ruckus, kneeling down and swearing allegiance?" Inluo also heard these words. She did not say anything, but looking at Courier, she frowned slightly and seemed to think of something in the past. Her eyes flashed with uneasiness. Sun Lang also frowned slightly. Li fire. Hutu. He suddenly thought of the will of fire. The spirit hidden in the gun that was taken away by the Li Fire Nation after the First Great War of Tianyuan. It was obtained from the Sky Demon. He also saw that after Courier said those words, the eyes of the hairy girl, who was usually calm and wise, flashed with unusual excitement and even brutality. Did the hostility and competitive attitude of the hairy people toward Hoodoo really come from the acquired teaching? Chapter 1155. The small interlude caused by Courier was glossed over. Sun Lang casually said a few words, and then Yin Luo pulled Mao Mei to the side and scolded her in a low voice. Courier also woke up from this inexplicable fanatical state, but he was still very excited. If an analogy had to be made, this was equivalent to a certain hot-blooded and patriotic young man from China on Earth who was inexplicably involved in the Yasukuni Shrine bombing in Japan. When a leader put on a gas mask for him and said, "Remember, don't speak Chinese," he would inevitably fall into a fanatical state. This was a spiritual impulse that originated from the bloodline. As Yin Luo scolded Courier in a low voice, he vaguely threw a glance at Sun Lang. Sun Lang nodded imperceptibly. The continuous line of carriages drove forward and finally entered the imperial capital. The carriages flowed like water, and the horses were like dragons. For a time, it even caused congestion at the northern gate of the imperial capital. However, the arrogant city guards all pulled themselves together and went back and forth to maintain order. They shouted loudly and quickly smoothed out the situation. The big flag of Shinto province was bright and dazzling, attracting the attention of the people in the imperial capital. It must be known that the imperial capital was at the foot of the Sun of Heaven. As the center of an ancient and powerful empire, the residents here were definitely the happiest group of people in the world. They lived under a legal system with a strong atmosphere of human rights, and their governance was relatively clear. Everyone's happiness index was very high. As the saying went, when one is full and warm, one will think of lust. As the happiest group of people in the world, the thing that the people in the imperial capital loved to do the most was to talk and laugh, talk about the politics of the imperial court, and gossip about the high officials of the imperial court. In any case, the imperial capital was different from the countryside. Talking about the politics of the imperial court would not lead to a death sentence. Even if they talked about the gossip of the adults, no one would find trouble with them. Therefore, when they saw the General of Divine Strategy's ostentatious appearance today, they would definitely discuss and give some pointers. After all, Sun Jingrong was the most popular figure in the imperial court these days. His various deeds couldn't be finished even if they talked for 3 days and 3 nights. Today, there was another topic to talk about him. For example, when the several idlers on the street below the city gate saw the banner of Shinto province, they were startled at first, and then revealed a knowing smile that was a mixture of admiration and vulgarity. They took out a small booklet from their bosoms at the same time and shouted at the carriage in unison, "The general is a master of painting." For a moment, it was as if a pot had exploded. Those who understood naturally understood. The group of men all screamed and wailed at the top of their lungs. After all, the erotic paintings in this world were too lame. A country bumpkin who had never seen the world would be able to stare hard at those kinds of erotic paintings. When they saw Sun Lang's erotic painting style that was borrowed from the social security paintings of the later generations, their intestines would probably shoot out. They couldn't wait to worship General Sun, who was well-versed in both civil and martial arts, as their ancestor. Yin Luo and the others were greedily looking at the scenery of the capital. When they suddenly heard these shouts, they couldn't help but be startled. "You seem to have a good reputation." She smiled and said, "Also, a master of painting? What did you draw?" "What the hell?" Sun Lang panicked at first, but then he calmed down. Don't panic. Don't make a fuss about nothing. What's there to panic about? Look, Yin Luo is about to meet Ping Yang soon. I'm not surprised about this. I don't know how long Shin Yaohua's matter could be hidden, but I'm not afraid of this either. The matter of Conan and Wei Wangshu hasn't been settled yet, and the matter of the cat girl hasn't been settled yet. I haven't even had time to panic about these messy matters. What's the big deal about drawing a booklet? As soon as Sun Lang thought of this, he calmed down. Moreover, the reason why he created the comic Xian Beasts was not to provide social security for the aborigines of this world. Hidden under the explosive style and welfare plot was a well-thought-out political metaphor. Obviously, this was a great satirical work. With a grotesque method and a novel plot, It pointed out the hidden worries and shackles that the empire faced in the era of great development of civilization and the changes in the world structure. It also focused on the potential threats of the Hutus' development and the future development direction. If nothing unexpected happened, this work would definitely be recorded in history. It would show the spiritual style of the advanced ideas of this era to future generations. It would show the rebellious spirit and innovative style of a group of new-era imperial ministers led by Shansei, General Sun Lang. It would subvert the inherent stereotype of the ancients that future generations had. I think that many years later, when a human civilization launches an unmanned outer solar system space probe to outer space, the image of this great work will definitely be engraved on the golden plates that record the characteristics of the human civilization. Well, I feel very excited when I think of this. Luo looked at the inexplicably excited Sun Lang and rolled his eyes. Although I don't know what you're talking about, I don't think they will do that. Looking at your expression, I know it's something perverted. Sun Lang smiled. So don't secretly look at it. Since it's something perverted, then if you look at it, it will prove that you're also a little perverted girl, a little perverted girl. Luo snorted. I won't look. Seeing the two talking happily, Ms. Zhao did not want to be left out and interrupted. She changed the topic. Sun Lang, how long until we get home? I'm so tired. Sun Lang pushed open the window and looked at the scenery outside. He thought for a moment and said, Soon. This house was taken from the emperor's side. I sent away all the servants and maids, so the house is now empty. You brought a lot of people this time, right? Ms. Zhao patted her small chest and proudly said, Don't worry, I brought a lot of useful people from my hometown. Even if it's not enough, I can recruit more. Anyway, I can distinguish between loyalty and treachery. A strange purple light flashed in her eyes. So this kind of psychic power was really good for war and personnel work. Although it was not as convenient as Xia Wei's mind reading, it was enough to be domineering. Moreover, Ms. Zhao did not have any taboos and was far from Xia Wei's mental misophobia. Using this kind of special ability was really handy. Sun Lang nodded and smiled approvingly at her. There was no one available in Shinto province, so the civil and military officials under Sun Lang's command consciously took on all kinds of organizational transfer work. A few civil officials took on similar positions in the military back in the day, so they were quite handy in commanding. The long caravan stopped one after another on the wide road in front of Shinto province. The escorting riders were separated and settled down. The permission from the martial arts hall and the Ministry of War had been obtained long ago, so everything was carried out in an orderly manner. Miss Zhao stood on the carriage and looked at the stewards from the Marquis Jingon residence. From now on, you are all people of Shinto province. The position of head steward in the residence is vacant. Such a great general's residence, such a huge property, and unlimited future prospects. How far you can go will depend on your own abilities. Now, I want you to familiarize yourself with this residence as quickly as possible. Before tonight, the residence must be operating normally. Not only did the people below perk up their spirits, but Shinsei General Sun Lang was facing the most important juncture. There was no one available in the residence, but it wasn't empty. At least, Her Highness, Princess Pingyang, was like a weak puppy. She took 2 steps and 3 steps forward to welcome him. She used a slightly pitiful expression to look at Sun Lang, and then took a few undetectable glances to size up the women beside Sun Lang. Lu Shujin and Zhao Yunlong were acquaintances, so there was no pressure. The blonde-haired and blue-eyed Russian girl wasn't considered a person. That woman who stood on top and gave orders made Pingyang feel a trace of uneasiness. She didn't like strong women, and that young miss was obviously this type of person, just like her elder sister. In addition, there was also this woman with huge breasts. This woman gave Pingyang immense pressure. With just one look, Her Highness the Princess determined one thing. Her master was most likely snatched away by this woman. Oomph. She lowered her eyes and moved over obediently. She whispered, "Master, you're back." Her Highness the Princess raised her head, revealing a clear and innocent gaze like a deer. Her watery eyes swept across the women opposite her. She said softly and shyly, "I wonder which one of you is Master's wife." Sun Lang's fake smile froze on his face. He was just about to introduce the two sides to each other. What the hell is going on? Then, this must be Her Highness the Princess Pingyang. Inluo, who had a gentle and kind personality and was the least likely to insult others, was the first to speak. The girl looked at Princess Pingyang and smiled wholeheartedly. She said, "Congratulations, Your Highness. His Majesty's imperial decree is to marry you to your master. Are you happy?" Pingyang showed a timely expression of surprise and panic. She took a step back and shook her head uneasily and shyly. How can this be? How can I fight with Sister Xue Baochai? Hey. Chapter 1156. Hey, Pingyang, what are you talking about? What happened to being my personal little jacket? Sun Lang froze in place, cold sweat dripping down his back. He realized that his cute and innocent little disciple wasn't actually a personal little jacket that respected her master. She was actually a soft hedgehog armor, and it was the kind with the barbs facing inwards. Why did you have to bring up a sore spot? In that instant, he finally understood something. Sun Lang's greatest threat wasn't in the Imperial Palace or the Sky Demon. It was in Shinto Province. It was among Sun Lang's girlfriends and his little wings. In a moment of carelessness, the two most simple and innocent girls actually took the initiative to argue with each other. Their gentle smiles hid the glint of swords, and their sincere words were filled with terrible malice. For pairs of eyes met, and there seemed to be sparks in the air. Inluo chuckled. "Your Highness, you really have a glib tongue. You really know how to talk." Princess Pingyang shyly glanced at Sun Lang and smiled shyly. "You're too kind. It's all because Master taught me well. I'm so stupid, really. In the Tianyuan army, I used to curse people all day long. I cursed in a roundabout way, directly, in a parallel, figurative, set questions, and rhetorical questions. I never avoided Chow Patao and Chow Patao. Later on, Chow Patao became so good at cursing people that Pingyang couldn't learn. I really didn't expect this. These seemingly harmless and mild-tempered girls obviously had their own ideas and thoughts. From this point of view, Chow Patao was still the best." Sun Lang sighed with emotion. He glanced at Zhao Yunlong, who was standing to the side. Chow Patao immediately sensed Sun Lang's gaze and turned his head. His expression changed seamlessly, revealing a silly and honest smile that Sun Lang enjoyed. As expected of Chow Patao, he had been Sun Lang's personal bodyguard and #1 henchman for many years. He always thought about what Sun Lang was thinking and worried about what Sun Lang was worried about. In an instant, he understood the awkward situation that Sun Lang was in. There was an unwavering determination in her sincere eyes. "Sun Lang, you'll always be my big brother." Then, she stood up and separated the smiling Princess Pingyang and Inluo. She said impatiently, All right. What are you two playing house for? Now that the Emperor has officially announced his awakening, the second phase of the battle between Sun Lang and him is about to begin. I'm so busy that I don't have time to see you two fooling around. If you two want to have a private fight, let me know and I'll be your referee. Do you understand? If you understand, then hurry up and come in. You're blocking the door and making a fool of yourself." Chow Patao would only enter his silly working dog state when he was beside Sun Lang. Normally, he was still very dignified. After all, he was a famous general of Tianyuan, the #1 king of Downing. He still held the record for killing Sky Demon generals. He could suppress both Pingyang and Inluo. She was just as capable as a shepherd dog. She was playing the bad guy, so Sun Lang tacitly began to play the bad guy as well. He said in a low voice, "Well, the most important thing right now is to deal with the threat from the Emperor. Can we let other things go? Of course, it's fine if you don't agree. I can only accompany you." "Oh, you dare to accompany me to the end?" Inluo cast a sidelong glance at him, hinting with his eyes that he wanted to show him his methods. Sun Lang sighed. He revealed a melancholy expression, and his big, sparkling eyes revealed a helplessness mixed with tiredness and guilt. His fingertips slid from his cheeks to his forehead. He lowered his head slightly, and his coquettish air moved without wind. After switching to this mode, Sun Lang slowly looked around at the beautiful faces in front of him and said emotionally, I, Sun Lang, am not worthy. By the way, this sentence pattern was something he had learned from an ancient harem web novel. It was really powerful, enough to make any woman who had the slang attribute tremble in fear. As expected, once these words came out, the girls immediately shivered. Small goosebumps bloomed on their white and soft skin, and an indescribable chill gushed out from the bottom of their hearts. Even Miss Zhao was no exception. Inluo loudly said, Stop, 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 don't say any more. Sun Lang affectionately said, Inluo. Inluo covered his eyes and shouted, Shut up, go away. Don't use such a disgusting expression and tone to talk to me. Can you please be more normal? So Sun Lang looked at Ping Yang again, and the disgusting expression changed to a cold face. It was much easier to deal with this little disciple. He had accumulated his power for a long time, and only one look was enough. The imposing manner that Ping Yang had just forcefully put up was quickly defeated. She snuck behind Annie Lu and stuck out half of her little head to look at Sun Lang. Her eyes were a little resentful and a little angry. She had a look that said, I'll remember this grudge. What on earth is this guy thinking? How boring. At this moment, a cold voice sounded from inside the door. The familiar voice made everyone's expression turn cold. Everyone turned their heads to look, only to see a white figure with clothes fluttering in the wind. A vigorous and valiant figure strode out. His eyebrows were handsome, and his aura was naturally noble. It was General Tensei, Emperor Empress. She narrowed her eyes, and her phoenix-like eyes swept half of the room. She sneered and said, You seem to be enjoying all this, Sun Lang. The enemy is right in front of you, and your life is on the line, but you are flirting with a group of little girls. Family matters are actually more important than national affairs. You can't distinguish between the importance of the matter, and you don't have a sense of the big picture. You're still the same as before. Before Sun Lang could fight back, Inluo raised her eyebrows and stood in front of him. She said to Empress Tensei aggressively, We don't need outsiders to interfere with our private affairs. As for whether Sun Lang can do things well, both His Majesty the Emperor and His Highness Empress should be very clear about this. Zhao Feihuang also snorted and said sarcastically, Yo, 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 this is Shinto province, right? I thought it was Tensei province. The women of Shinto province haven't married into the family yet, and the women of Tensei province have stepped in first. What is His Highness Empress so anxious about? Unfortunately, there are some things that can't be done no matter how anxious you are. Lu Shujin's expression was also unfriendly. Like Miss Zhao, she had a personal grudge with Empress, not to mention Zhao Yunlong. In an instant, the situation changed from internal strife to a united front against the enemy. Empress said lightly, I'm not interested in your trifling matters at all. It's just that Sun Lang invited me to his residence for a discussion. I'm busy with official business and have a heavy responsibility on my shoulders. I'm not like someone who can idle around all day. Time is really tight, so, Sun Lang, do you have something to say? Sun Lang nodded like he was pecking rice. Yes, yes, yes. Let's talk inside. The Empress concubine swept a glance at him and snorted. Virtue. Chapter 11:57. The vast Shinto province went from being cold and cheerless to being bustling with activity. Young Lady Zhao had brought a large number of well-trained stewards and servants from the Marquis Manor, and the Zhang family had also forced many people in. The people of the two manors had now changed their appearances and officially became the authorized personnel of Shinto province. They had all received many instructions and orders beforehand. Now, with a beautiful yearning and expectation for a new life, they took over the management of Shinto province with the greatest enthusiasm and motivation. The stewards hurriedly patrolled around to check the layout of the entire residence. The maids began to sweep and clean, and the servants unloaded the huge caravan of supplies and batches. Everyone was working in full swing, sweating profusely as they tried to obtain the praise and appreciation of the new head of the family, and from then on walked to the peak of life. However, their plans came to nothing, because the wise and powerful new master could not even take care of himself. General Sun Lang fell into a predicament. He was trying to find a way out of this hopeless situation between his ex-girlfriend, his current harem, and the fiancée that the emperor had appointed. In the main hall of the Divine Strategy residence, the guest room that had never been used before was suffused with an indescribably murderous atmosphere. There were no servant girls, no etiquette, and no tea. There were only women with icy cold expressions and surging killing intent. They were ceaselessly sizing each other up with profound gazes. Sun Lang sat at the head of the table. The young girls all stood at his side, giving off the dignified feeling of the master of the house. Unfortunately, he did not feel proud. The scene in front of him made him feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. Sun Lang wanted to say something to liven up the atmosphere, but his usual eloquence had lost its effect. He felt that his throat was dry, and his lips seemed to be glued together. He could not say anything. He could only force out a smile and say to the Empress across from him, Say something." Her Highness Empress sat in the guest seat with her hand supporting her chin and her legs crossed. Her plump and healthy thighs swayed slightly, showing a noble, graceful, and unruffled bearing. Speaking of which, this posture had been taught to her by Sun Lang many years ago. General Tensei liked it very much. Over time, it had become an instinct. She had entered Sun Lang's lair alone. As his ex-girlfriend, she not only had to face her former lover who had turned into an enemy, she also had to face this fellow's group of unfriendly new lovers. However, Her Highness Empress maintained her elegant bearing and cold arrogance, continuing the strength and stubbornness that she had when they met outside the city. Hearing Sun Lang's opening words, she coldly glanced at Sun Lang. "Do you really think I'm an emergency prop?" "Humph." She revealed a cold and elegant smile. "Then as you wish." Her cold and sharp eyes swept across the faces of the women behind Sun Lang one by one. General Tensei said as if nothing had happened, "Oh, not everyone is here yet. Will the rest come?" The air condensed again. The number of needles on the felt under Sun Lang's, but suddenly increased by 3 times. Damn, I knew it. As expected of Sun Lang, the more uneasy Empress was, the stronger the sense of resistance in his heart was. In this desperate situation, he calmed down and quickly thought of a way to deal with it. He sighed and said, all right, we're done for a long time. We're both adults and people who care about face. Since we've turned against each other, let's use our own methods instead of using petty tricks to disgust others. You don't need to sow discord here. It's useless. Do you understand? They're all sensible and good girls. They believe that I will give them a satisfactory explanation. They are willing to wait and will not follow your wishes and make trouble for me at this dangerous and critical moment. Do you understand? As soon as he said this, the number of needles under his but decreased by about 1/3. But it was still quite prickly. Empress's pupils shrank slightly, but her expression did not change. If it was only Sun Lang, it would be fine. But Zhang Yinluo and the others were present. She did not want to show any disrespect in front of these women. She said slowly, "Okay, then let's get to the point." General Tensei's eyes turned to Ping Yang, who was standing weakly at the side. That was her biological sister. Although she was too weak and lacked her own opinions, she was still her biological sister. "You are a general of the country and an important minister. Father wants to marry his daughter, so he should ask the senior officials in the court to be the matchmaker. Today, he only sent a few eunuchs to congratulate you." "It is a bit childish," she said calmly, "but he is the emperor after all. He can even force a crown prince, let alone marrying an unknown princess. This matter depends on his motivation and willingness." Sun Lang knocked on the table and met Empress's eyes. When their eyes met, their hearts trembled slightly. It was not because of old feelings, but because they were reminded of the past. There had been many days and nights when they sat and discussed like this, each expressing their own opinions. The collision of ideas produced countless feasible and unfeasible ideas. They removed the wheat and kept the wheat, giving birth to a strategy to destroy the sky demon. In terms of tacit understanding, cooperation, mutual understanding, and familiarity, Empress was the one who was most compatible with Sun Lang. Even Zhao Yunlong could not compare to her in this aspect. Today, the old scene repeated itself. They still had a common enemy, but the common enemy had become the emperor. Moreover, these two people were no longer partners. Sun Lang suppressed the complicated thoughts in his mind and said calmly, "We have many reasons to believe that the emperor needs to do this. For him, there are many benefits. Moreover, Pingyang has a special identity. Li Guanyuan does not mind using this." Pingyang played the role of the Earth Swordswoman, and she was also acknowledged by the Earth Swordswoman. For Sun Lang and Empress, who knew the origin and secrets of the Earth Swordswoman, being acknowledged by the Earth Swordswoman meant a more terrifying and unpredictable problem, and they seemed to have the same purpose. Of course, it was just that it seemed. "You don't have to doubt my thoughts and purpose," Sun Lang said. "Without a doubt, I will protect Pingyang and her safety. I will protect her from being hurt and used by your scumbag father. But the question is, can I trust you? Are you willing to protect her?" It was not strange that Sun Lang asked this question. Empress had already proved her cold-bloodedness and ruthlessness in the Great Desolate Mountain incident. She had the bearing of a ruler. She was cruel to herself, and even more cruel to others. One could not expect such a person to care about family. At least, Li Guanyuan would not care. His sons and daughters were all his chess pieces. Then, would Empress care about Pingyang's safety? General Tensei glanced at his sister. Princess Pingyang, who was involved in the whirlpool, lowered her head uneasily and played with her fingers. Even when the topic was about her, she did not raise her head. Empress knew that her sister was holding back tears. No one could stand the feeling of being used by their father. She turned back and looked at Sun Lang, asking, "Will you marry her? Are you crazy?" Chapter 1158. Are you willing to marry her? This question also lifted the spirits of the girls on Sun Lang's side. Logically speaking, women who were passionate about politics and conspiracies were in the minority. Among the people present, only Miss Zhao was good at this, and she listened attentively with the idea of sharing Sun Lang's worries. In addition, Courier, as a staunch member of the foreign reactionary forces, was also very interested in listening. In Luo, Chao Patao, and Annie Lu were not interested until Her Highness Empress threw out this explosive topic. They all pricked up their ears, and their eyes became sharp. Even Miss Zhao and Miss Mao's attention was diverted. Their gazes fell on Pingyang in unison. Then they turned to Empress's face. Only then did they realize that Princess Pingyang and Empress Tensei looked alike. The reason why they did not notice it before was that Her Highness Empress's aura was too strong. The halo of General Tensei was dazzling enough, not to mention the more troublesome persona of Sun Lang's ex-girlfriend, which made them feel as if they were facing a formidable enemy. In the hearts of the girls, the face of Empress Tensei had already been painted black and painted into the image of a monster with fangs and red eyes. Her appearance had also been solidified into the image of a shameless little B*TCH who dumped Sun Lang. They did not care how beautiful Her Highness Empress was. They only cared about whether this woman and Sun Lang showed signs of revival. Basically, that was the case. Moreover, the Emperor's concubine had been in command of a large army for many years and held a high position as a minister. Thus, she had developed a unique and noble temperament. People would often first notice her temperament, aura, and bearing, and then slightly overlook her beauty. Or perhaps they didn't care how beautiful she was, because to a woman like her, beauty was the least important value. The power, achievements, and status that she had obtained were enough to shame the majority of men. However, Princess Pingyang's temperament were the complete opposite of Her Highness the Crown Princess. The more powerful and confident the Crown Princess was, the more introverted and shy Pingyang was. Even though the two of them had extremely similar appearances, because of the difference in temperament and style, it made people unable to notice the similarities between the two of them. This was probably because if the two of them stood together, all of the gazes and praises would be snatched away by the radiant Her Highness the Crown Princess. No matter how beautiful Pingyang was, in front of her sister, she was just an insignificant contrast. People did not even notice that she and Empress Tensei had very similar appearances. To have such an incomparably strong and talented elder sister, what a sigh it would be. After hearing Empress's question, Pingyang raised her head in surprise. Then she noticed the surprise in the eyes of Yin Luo and the others. She could not help but smile bitterly in her heart. Did they just find out? She was really used to this. People who had known her for a long time would say in surprise, "Hey, you look like Her Highness Empress." Even if people knew that she was a princess and that she was the younger sister of the Heavenly Strategy's Empress concubine, they would only think about it after a long time. Pingyang had been like this since she was a child. Standing in front of her radiant sister, she was always compared, then discussed, and finally ignored. The more dazzling Empress's halo was, the smaller her figure was, and the more inferior she felt. Things went from bad to worse until she met Sun Lang. That man, at first, she was just curious. Because her sister was so arrogant, so talented, and looked down on all men in the world as if they were nothing, why would she be so fond of a man and often praise him? Then, due to a freak combination of factors, she somehow gained a master. When she came to the army, she came into contact with many things that she had never come into contact with before. She learned a lot of knowledge and skills from her master. Some were useful, some were useless, some were strange, and some were not strange. The most important thing was that she went to the battlefield. It was a frontline battlefield where real swords and spears were used. It was a place where humans and sky demon clashed. Blood stained the yellow sand. Heaven and earth were angry. Countless lives fell here. Countless heroic souls were sublimated here. Fearless soldiers practiced the ultimate meaning of martial arts here. Here, the boundary between life and death became very blurred. She followed her master's figure, fighting and killing. Her master was very good to her. In private, he was not serious, but on the battlefield he was very scary. Although he was scary, he was also very considerate. He would take care of her on the battlefield. After returning to the camp, he would also care about her mental state, whether she was afraid of the battlefield, whether she could not stand the thick blood and cruel killing. This kind of consideration, this kind of concern, was actually unnecessary. Her master was good in every way, but he did not understand a woman's heart. In fact, Pingyang had been keeping a little secret about herself. The reason why she didn't tell her master frankly was that, first, she felt that it was a little strange, and second, she was greedy. Greedy for her master's care and consideration. This would make her feel warm and happy. So she did not tell her master. She did not tell him that she actually liked the battlefield very much. She liked the feeling of cutting off the enemy's limbs. She liked to see the enemy's flesh and blood flying everywhere. She liked to feel the enemy's unwillingness and pain. Let their despair enter her heart. She liked to send death to them, take their lives, and personally send the enemy to hell. She actually liked this feeling very much, because this would make her feel a sense of reality. On the battlefield, she was no longer Empress Tensei's useless sister. She was no longer a shadow. She was a warrior. She waved the judgment of death in her own name with her sword and sent the powerful enemy to hell. She was the cause of the sword and the effect of the massacre. Her comrades would praise her performance. Her enemies would respect her bravery, and the cowards would cry loudly and curse her life and soul. All of this was done by her own hands. She felt incomparably real and satisfied. In addition, the person that her master comforted, cared for, protected, and cared for was also her. She was not General Tensei's sister, not the emperor's daughter, but his little disciple. Because of this, she felt happiness. It was a kind of complete happiness that belonged only to him. And now another kind of happiness seemed to have come to her. Marriage, marrying her master, staying by her master's side in the best way possible. This was something that her sister could not do, because her sister was already out of the game. She betrayed her master. She hurt him deeply. She thought that her master was already dead. She did not want to wait any longer. I have been waiting. I have been waiting for my master to come back. Now, my master will never forgive you. And I have waited. I can stay by my master's side. I can act coquettishly with him. I can chat with him. But sister, you will never have the chance. I have won. Have I won against my sister? In a daze, Pingyang heard her sister's words again. She repeated her question. Are you going to marry her? Pingyang shuddered. No, what does that mean? She looked at her sister and vaguely had a bad premonition. Since you said that the emperor has a strong motive to push this matter forward, the few eunuchs outside the city who went to congratulate us were just a declaration of war. He must have a follow-up plan. The empress concubine glanced at Yin Luo and the others and snorted. You should have already told them. The matter of Pingyang once wielding the Hutu sacred sword. The emperor pushed Pingyang to your side as a chess piece with malicious intentions. He was certain that you wouldn't allow Pingyang to stay in a dangerous place in the palace and would definitely bring her to his side to take care of her. Now that he wants to make a move on this chess piece, are you going to just stand there and accept it? Sun Lang frowned. What do you want to say? General Tensei repeated the question just now. I asked you, are you going to marry her? In Luo and the others frowned. What did this woman mean? Could it be that she thought that she and Sun Lang could not continue their old relationship and wanted to entrust her obsession to her sister and let her sister marry in her place? This logic sounded ridiculous, but in a woman's mind, it was actually quite reasonable. Sun Lang glanced at Pingyang. Pingyang immediately noticed and immediately looked back. Her watery eyes were entwined with an inexplicable emotion. Sun Lang sighed and said in a muffled voice. Before he finished speaking, Empress interrupted him and said firmly, I suggest you agree. At least agree for now. Do you understand? Chapter 11:59. I suggest that you agree, at least for now. Do you understand? The Emperor's concubine said resolutely, I don't understand. The number of needles under my butt has doubled again. It's even more than before. Out of consideration for survival, Sun Lang immediately gave a standard answer. No, this is too unfair to everyone. Moreover, I don't like to treat this kind of marriage as a political game. Marriage has always been a political game. This is the rule. The Empress concubine coldly said, in the ancient dynasties, there were precedents of political marriages. Compared to the exhausting and costly military expeditions, compared to the unpredictable and risky war, it is more worth it to marry a woman and a few dowries. When the inside is more valuable than face, this is worth it. And right now, is there a lack of marriages between aristocratic families? With the convenience of marriage, there is a foundation for cooperation. The aristocratic families weave into a web of marriage. Their roots are intertwined, and they help each other. This is also the rule of the game. Let's not talk about anything else. If it weren't for your unclear relationship with Zhang Yin Luo, would Mingzhou's Zhang family place their hopes on you? If it weren't for your close relationship with Zhao Yunlong, would Songzhou's Zhao family treat you as one of their own? Sun Lang raised his eyebrows and said, When I make friends with people, I never look at their family background. Empress said calmly, Right now, we are discussing the result and not the process. No matter what the motive is, the result is that you have benefited greatly from your womanizing network. With the help of Zhang Yinluo's face and the Zhang family's many generations of management, you can effortlessly obtain Li Hua's trust and trade license. Based on your relationship with Zhao Yunlong, the entire Songzhou will add flowers to your brocade. Do you think that the aristocratic families of Mingzhou see you as one of their own because of your Shansei general's illustrious military exploits, or because of your unclear relationship with the Marquis of Jing'an's manor? The Jiangnan aristocratic family of the Summer State already has the intention of electing you as the leader of the alliance. Is it only because of your status as the head of the Jia family and your own reputation and ability? Sun Lang sneered. You're talking as if I'm nothing without these things. You also know that it's just icing on the cake. Even if I'm alone, I can still kill Li Guangyuan. The Emperor concubine calmly raised her hand. Then go. Sun Lang snorted. It's true that you can accomplish things on your own, but it's only limited to slaughter and destruction. If you want to do something else, these troublesome relationships will have value and significance. If there is no one in the imperial court to cheer for you, you will be alone. If all the people in the 9 regions see you as their enemy, you will not be able to enjoy the stability and glory you have now. Empress said indifferently, "Do you want me to continue?" Sun Lang snorted again. Yin Luo and the others watched the whole process, and their thoughts were very complicated. Zhao Yunlong and Lu Shujin, who came first, were fine. They just rolled their eyes, but Yin Luo and the others had mixed feelings in their hearts. Looking at all this in front of them and listening to the debate and discussion between Sun Lang and Empress, they indeed felt helpless and sighed. "How are you so skilled? How many times have you done it?" Especially when these two people were fiercely debating, they unconsciously emitted a kind of aura, as if there was no one else around, faintly excluding others. Empress's skillful persuasion skills advanced step by step. Sun Lang's face was full of disdain and stubbornness. So annoying. Although they knew that it was absolutely impossible for them to be together, it was still annoying. There were daggers in the girl's eyes. Sun Lang twisted his body uncomfortably. There was a downside to being too strong in martial arts. The powerful spiritual mind was very sensitive to the faint murderous intent and dissatisfaction. As for the Empress concubine, who was sitting opposite Sun Lang, she directly received all sorts of subtle gazes. She still acted as if nothing had happened and said indifferently, "So, do you understand now? Temporarily agreeing to this request will bring you some additional benefits. For example, it can make my useless elder brother feel more at ease." Sun Lang raised his eyebrows. "But this will convey the signal that I have reached a reconciliation with the Emperor. The reason why many people in the imperial court acquiesce to me messing around in the imperial capital is that they want to see me and the Emperor fight and both of us suffer. Now, if they see signs of confluence, I'm afraid they won't be able to sit still. I do have this concern." A strange light flashed through the Empress concubine's eyes. She said in a low voice, "But have you thought about it?" The Emperor suggested marrying Ping Yang. Perhaps he foresaw that you would not agree due to various reasons. Thus, he will take the next step. Of course, you can counter soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir, but this matter involves Ping Yang. Are you willing to see her trapped in a dilemma and be manipulated by others? Sun Lang said decisively, "There are priorities. For me, the most important thing is to ensure the advantage that I have maintained so far. In this way, Ping Yang will suffer some grievances, but her life will not be in danger. But if I get myself involved, Ping Yang may not be as simple as suffering some grievances." Empress's face turned cold. "What a heart of stone," Sun Lang replied coldly. "Compared to you, I am a little worse." The woman snorted disdainfully and then said, "Although it is a fallacy, it is also reasonable. What you're worried about is that if you pretend to agree to this marriage, it is very easy to face the backlash of the court. But have you ever thought that maybe there is a way to get the best of both worlds?" Sun Lang's expression changed. "What?" Empress said coldly. "Are you scared out of your wits today? If you are always so muddle-headed, you may fall into the Emperor's trap one day. Haven't you thought of it? The thing you are best at?" Sun Lang thought for a while, and then his eyes gradually brightened. He slapped his thigh. "I see. I got it." General Shin's eyebrows were covered with a layer of light. It seemed that he had found the best solution. Shortly after, he revealed a suspicious expression as he vigilantly sized up the Emperor's concubine. "You're this kind? Or do you have some other conspiracy? What good will it do you if this thing is done?" Empress sneered and then shook her head. "Sun Lang, you said that anger will make people lose the most basic judgment. This is what you said to me. I didn't expect you to forget it." She stared at the familiar face opposite her and said calmly, "Hatred blinded your eyes. You looked at me through hatred, and what you saw was naturally all twisted and evil. It is funny that you are in the situation, but you can't think of this. You always speculate about me with the greatest malice and ignore some things that shouldn't be ignored. The woman put down her long legs and stood up. Her tall figure was like a deep pool in a mountain. She was a beautiful woman, but when she stood, she was like a mountain. She looked down at the man sitting opposite her proudly and said in a firm and unquestionable tone, "Most of the time, the things I do are not for my own benefit." Sun Lang was stunned for a moment, and then he came back to his senses. He said coldly, "Doing some evil things for the so-called great reasons and motives is even more hateful than simply doing evil. The latter can sometimes be compassionate, and perhaps even repent. But when you go crazy, you have no bottom line and no hesitation. You can say whatever you want." Empress said coldly, "You come from a depraved place with corrupt morals. You have no morals and no beliefs. Everyone is like pigs and sheep. You live like livestock under the manipulation and use of the people in power and the rich. You work hard in the beautiful pig pens and sweet traps they built for you, but you enjoy it and don't know how to resist. How can you understand our will and sacrifice?" "Of course I don't understand. I don't want to understand, and I don't need to understand," Sun Lang said gloomily. "I can make your will and sacrifice meaningless." At this moment, Yin Luo suddenly reached out and put his hand on his shoulder. Sun Lang. Sun Lang was shocked, and his expression became clear. Empress glanced at Zhang Yin Luo and snorted. "That's all I have to say. I'll leave now. You can decide whether you believe what I said today or not." Sun Lang said indifferently, "Take care. I won't see you out." Empress glanced at him, and his expression became strange. "If I say that what I said and did today is not for my own benefit, would you believe me?" Sun Lang sneered and showed a mocking expression. It seemed that he did not believe it. "I don't believe it." Empress looked at Zhang Yin Luo with a mocking expression. Sun Lang was shocked and said, "I believe it. I believe it." Empress said with a smile, "Miss Zhang, let me tell you something. Shut up." Sun Lang shouted with no threat, like Wang Lang. "Village woman, how dare you?" The slender hand on Sun Lang's shoulder that woke him up from his anger suddenly tightened. Yin Luo said with a smile, "Your Highness Empress doesn't need to remind me. Sun Lang won't hide anything from us. He must have his reasons for not saying it now, right, Sun Lang?" Chapter 1160. Under someone's hostile glare, Empress laughed and went out. Sun Lang was left alone to face strong wind. He was still struggling as he shouted, "Yin Luo, let go of me. Yin Luo, let me teach this bad woman a lesson. She harbors ill intentions and is sinister and vicious. Have a taste of my world-shaking ultimate technique, Silver Stream." Before that, Yin Luo smiled and grabbed Sun Lang's shoulder. She said faintly, "Do you have anything else to say to us? Of course, it's fine if you don't say it, but you know it, right?" After all, there were some things that might not be lenient if he confessed. But if he chose to hide it and it was exposed later, the consequences would definitely be many times more serious than if he confessed at the beginning. This was the truth that Sun Lang's mother and teacher taught him with countless rattan sticks. Sun Lang's body stiffened, and then he slowly sat back in silence. "Okay," he said, "I'll tell you sooner or later. You'll know it sooner or later." The girls moved. Each of them moved a chair and sat around Sun Lang. They looked like they were sitting in a row and listening to the story. They were much more harmonious than when Empress was here. Sun Lang looked at them, a trace of melancholy and sadness appearing in his eyes. Sometimes, remembering the past was not a simple and easy thing, especially those painful past events. This meant that you had to tear open the wound that had already formed a scab and show the pain in your heart to others. He said slowly, "I used to have a sword saint friend whose surname was Chao." Zhao Yunlong's expression changed slightly. Pingyang bit her lips. Lu Shujin frowned. "You don't have to say this if you don't want to." Sun Lang said softly, "It's okay." He talked about the past when he met Brother Zhan. The flames of the War of Heaven's origin had spread across the entire Divine Land. Countless people with lofty ideals had joined the 6 armies and fought for the country. Many of them were idealists. They only wanted to expel the sky devils and had no intention of being promoted or getting rich. In peaceful times, these people would never appear on the battlefield. Only the battle of justice could bring them together under the same banner. In other words, most of the people on the Tianyuan hero list were freaks with personality problems. The top figures in the army must be the top freaks. Commander of War, Jia Ying, and Sword Saint of Water were the top freaks among the top freaks. They were not only weird, but also evil in their own ways. However, in terms of status and reputation, Commander of War was better. Sun Lang was good at fighting. Not only could he cut down the sky demon like chopping vegetables, but he was also very efficient in arranging and attacking the sky demon. He was ruthless and merciless. That was actually enough. As a warrior of Tianyuan, as long as you were brutal, good at fighting, and loyal enough, you would be the best of the best. The other problems, such as being full of dirty words, telling dirty stories every day, loving fighting, and hanging people on flagpoles, were all bonus points. But Brother Jean was different. He was actually a pacifist, the kind that was scared of blood. In the Great War of Tianyuan, which was full of iron and blood, a pacifist was undoubtedly the dregs among the dregs. He would be despised and spurned by everyone. What a joke. The crime of shaking the morale of the army was not a joke. If you openly declared that you did not want war and wanted peace, you would be chopped down by the general. Brother Jean obviously knew that. He tried very hard to hide it, but he could not avoid his responsibility. He was the Sword Saint of Water, one of the 7 most powerful sword masters of the empire. He represented the supreme force of the 6 armies of Tianyuan. The sense of responsibility made him feel miserable. Besides, he was also shouldering the expectations of his entire family. He did not dare to speak out his true thoughts. Otherwise, he would not only become a laughing stock, but his entire family would also be implicated and suffer a great humiliation and blow. Fortunately, he was the Sword Saint of Water, the supreme force of the empire. He was a noble strategic weapon. Of course, he did not need to go to the battlefield to kill small fries. The battlefield was about king versus king, soldier versus soldier. His main task was to hold the line and guard against the enemy's high-level forces. This job was relatively easy because he only needed to intercept a large number of high-level sky demon forces, divide the battlefield, and stall these ferocious sky demons. The other warriors of Tianyuan could then concentrate their superior forces to kill the rest of the sky demons. Then, they would turn around and kill the ones that were under their control. This tactic was very effective, and it was also praised by the heroes of the Heaven Yuan Empire. This was because the Water Radiant Sword Saint had shown great value that matched her reputation and strength. She had single-handedly intercepted a large number of valiant sky demons. Furthermore, she was not greedy and did not act rashly. Instead, she was willing to be a screw in the collective and let others take all the credit. Her noble spirit was praised by everyone. Who didn't want such a teammate? Furthermore, the Sword Saint of Water symbolized softness, flow, and nourishment. Not only was he good at defense and control, he was also very good at healing. When Brother Jean went to the battlefield, other than restraining the enemy's high-level forces, he was also very active in healing his seriously wounded comrades. Countless soldiers were saved by him, and after those soldiers were healed, they naturally became the Sword Saint of Water, making Brother Jean even more famous. With these 2 halos, Brother Jean was doing very well all the way. He did not weaken the reputation of the Sword Saint of Water at all, nor did he make anyone suspect him. Nobody would have thought that the heroic Sword Saint of Water was actually a psychopath with an abnormal brain. What a F***king pacifist. Brother Jean kept his little secret just like that. He wandered in the sea of blood of the Great War of Tianyuan involuntarily. Sometimes he was happy, sometimes he was confused, until he met Sun Lang. With his beast-like intuition and instinct, Sun Lang sensed that there was something wrong with this pretty boy. To be honest, this was actually a blind spot in his thinking. The soldiers who grew up in the bloody atmosphere of the Great War of Tianyuan would never think that there was such a thing as a pacifist in the world. However, Sun Lang was a time traveler who had experienced hundreds of battles. His thinking was not restricted, and he uncovered Brother Jean's little secret step by step. Brother Jean, who had received an elite aristocratic education since he was young and was as pure as a piece of white paper, was no match for Sun Lang, who had all kinds of poisons. As soon as they clashed, he was utterly defeated. After all, it was very easy to verify this matter. All he needed to do was tie up a team of Sky Demon Scouts, throw them in front of Brother Jean, and say that he wanted to kill them to broaden his horizons. Then, he would be able to read all the answers from Brother Jean's eyes, expression, and movements. Hutu's peerless guardian, Tinyuan's supreme force, and the powerful sword saint of water. So far, he had not killed a single sky demon. This was simply the most absurd black humor in the world. It was a big joke that even the sky demon could not believe. As a result, Brother Jean immediately collapsed. His psychological defense was immediately broken. Sun Lang took advantage of the situation to grab hold of the sword saint of water's weakness. He grasped Brother Jean's big secret and had a huge bargaining chip. If this secret is leaked out, not only will your reputation be ruined, but your family will also be implicated. They will be spurned and criticized by everyone. Do you understand now? If you understand, then obediently listen to me. That was about it. After this incident, the relationship between the two changed qualitatively. It changed from a simple and polite nodding acquaintance to a relationship of bad friends. Of course, it was Sun Lang who was playing tricks on Brother Jean. He held on to Brother Jean's secret and forced Brother Jean to do some strange things to satisfy his bad taste. Brother Jean secretly shed tears, feeling sad about his bitter life. At the same time, he was forced by Sun Lang's abuse of power and could only obediently listen to his orders. Later, this became a reason for him to convince himself. Yes, it was Jia Ying, that evil person, who forced me to do it. I had no choice. While lamenting about his difficult life, he used Jia Ying's coercion as an excuse to gradually let himself go. Occasionally, he would do some things that the young masters of aristocratic families could not do. As for whether Jia Ying was an evil person or a good friend to him, perhaps he only understood this point in the end. But there was one thing that he would never know. That was the reason why Sun Lang discovered his secret, the reason why he did not want to fight, the reason why he did not want to kill the Sky Demon, and the reason why he looked at him differently was because Sun Lang was the same. Sun Lang was also unwilling to fight, and Sun Lang was also unwilling to kill the Sky Demon. Sun Lang was also like him, forced to do things that he did not want to do. Chapter 1161. The room was quiet, and only Sun Lang's recollection could be heard. His friendship with Brother Jean was a combination of coincidence and necessity. His curiosity made him feel the strangeness of the sword saint of water, and he investigated further. After discovering the truth, he had a strange feeling of sympathy for each other and became more and more interested in this strange, pretty boy. It was probably like an ill-fated relationship. At first, they were just acquaintances, and then they got to know each other. But on the surface, the difference in personality between the two was too big. One was a gentle young master from a noble family, and the other was a public hooligan who was full of obscenities. They were creatures from two different worlds. Brother Jean kept a respectful distance from Sun Lang, for fear of being infected with some strange fetishes, and only maintained a basic friendship in military affairs. Sun Lang, on the other hand, had a natural hostility toward pretty boys from noble families who were more handsome than him, and would not have anything to do with the sword saint of water. Compared to reciting poems, he preferred to keep on cursing. Later, due to the strange intuition he had after fighting side by side several times, Sun Lang gradually dug out the little secret of the sword saint of water, and the relationship between the two changed qualitatively. It was said that what some perverts liked to do the most was to make noble, pure, and unyielding female knights fall into depravity, so that they could enjoy the forbidden pleasure of tarnishing purity and profaning nobility. Sun Lang, as a pure man with lofty ambitions and great ambitions, naturally disdained to make a move on women. This kind of playstyle was too weak. He was more inclined to tease those who were either righteous or elegant. Making them jump and curse was the lowest level of playstyle, and the next level was to make them do things that were free of themselves. And the highest level of playstyle was to twist them into strange, funny people. And Brother Jean was undoubtedly a piece of unpolished jade. It was even more fun than Bao. Therefore, Sun Lang tried to teach him to say all kinds of dirty words and encourage him to express his inner feelings in a more frank way. Of course, this attempt was always a failure. Even when Brother Jean's white face turned red and he pointed at Sun Lang and kept trembling, he still didn't say anything vulgar like F***CK your mother. Instead, he trembled with anger like a weak little girl and said something like, "You, why are you so unreasonable? Weak, too weak." In addition, Sun Lang also told him about the legendary story of Bruce Wayne. This Wayne swordsman had once made an oath not to kill. No matter how unforgivable the enemy was, he would not take the enemy's life. However, other than killing, he could do anything. He could break the bones of the criminal's body piece by piece without any psychological burden. He used the example of the sages to encourage Brother Jean. He said that Brother Jean could follow the wisdom of the sages and cut off the limbs of the sky demon on the battlefield. That way, it wouldn't be able to hurt anyone, right? If you were afraid that it would bleed to death, you could use the power of water to stop the bleeding. How kind and benevolent this was. At that time, Brother Jean had already been fooled by Sun Lang to the point that he did not know anything. When he heard this, he believed it in a daze. In the next battle, under Sun Lang's kind guidance, he went against the norm of assisting and controlling the field. He took the initiative to attack and kill. He cut out many demonic rods and even very enthusiastically treated the wounds of the sky demons. It was a great victory. The soldiers of the Empire witnessed Swordmaster Chun Xing's achievements. The sky demon saw many famous champions and great sages being cut off. The evaluation of the Sword Saint of Water changed drastically. His reputation in both camps changed to brutal. The main reason was that the Sword Sage of Aqua Radiance was too scary when she was angry. Both humans and heavenly demons kept quiet out of fear when they thought about what had happened that day. They all wanted to figure out whether the Sword Sage of Aqua Radiance's ferocity was due to the fall of morality or the distortion of human nature. Brother Jean, who was in the center of the storm, blamed Sun Lang with a sobbing tone. Sun Lang, of course, would make sarcastic remarks. This is a good thing. This way, no one will suspect that you are a pacifist. Even a clay bodhisattva would have some anger, not to mention the Sword Saint of Water. After being tricked so many times, he would also complain and resist. He would also say some unthreatening words. However, Sun Lang was too brutal. Brother Jean couldn't beat him in a fight or scolding. Moreover, Sun Lang would raise the most politically correct flag. I, Jiaying, have swept the world and swept the world. I, Jiaying, have won the hearts of the people. I, Jiaying, have won the hearts of the people. I, Jiaying, have won the hearts of the people. I, Jiaying, have won the glory of the people. What can you do in this time of national crisis? Then, he would shoot at Brother Jean from the moral high ground. Brother Jean almost vomited blood and fell off his horse. In any case, Shui Yao had been in the military and had also learned some military tactics. He still understood the principle of playing to one's strengths and avoiding one's weaknesses. Therefore, he bypassed the military achievements and talked about Sun Lang's personal conduct. He said that Sun Lang was just a vulgar martial artist who didn't understand politics and only knew martial arts. He was like a barbarian and was not elegant at all. Sun Lang smiled coldly. He pretended to say that he didn't care about the small ways of poetry and songs. That kind of shallow stuff couldn't be used to kill the enemy or eat. What was the use of learning it? It was fine as long as it was enjoyable. Those were the leftovers from his childhood. Brother Jean suddenly became spirited. Bragging? Leftovers from your childhood? Why don't you make a poem? Why don't you write some words? Thus, the greatest nightmare of this cultured and refined young master arrived with a loud bang. My friend, please learn about the 300 poems of the Tang Dynasty and the Song Dynasty. Also, please write some poems of the frontier fortress. To be honest, Sun Lang had experienced the war as soon as he crossed over. He had been fighting all day long. In the killing field where there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood, what was the use of those poems and songs? He had never been able to copy poems and show off in front of the natives of the alien world, which was often a pity for him. Today, Brother Jean sent himself to his door. Obviously, compared with the accumulation of 1,000 or 2,000 years in the other world, his personal struggle was really insignificant. Brother Jean was hit so hard that he doubted his life. It could be said that he was very pitiful. After so many twists and turns, Brother Jean struggled and was confused in helplessness and resistance. He was forced to pinch his nose and listen to Sun Lang's nonsense. He argued and thought because he had been following the rules all his life and thought that everything in the world was in order. His family had taught him too well, and his life had been too smooth, so he didn't know how to think or question. Sun Lang's rebellious thoughts had a particularly big impact on him. It was really an ill-fated relationship, that kind of relationship. At that time, in Sun Lang's heart, Shui Yao was just a silly bookworm. It was fun to tease him, an idiot who never understood anything, an extremely inflexible and inflexible blockhead. He was loyal to his country, filial and sensible. He didn't know how to resist and never knew how to make his own decisions. He and Sun Lang were like two extremes. One was extremely conservative, and the other was extremely unbridled. But a person's heart was the most difficult thing to measure. Maybe he had never really understood this friend of his. This clumsy, pedantic, unenlightened, old-fashioned bookworm. He had once been ignorant and lost. He had once passed his days in a muddle. When he finally broke free from his shackles, faced his heart, and let out his angry roar, he had already reached the end of his life. Even Sun Lang didn't expect that in that desperate situation, surrounded by the killing intent, the one who stood out bravely was such a person. Sun Lang skipped the previous events of the Great Barren Mountain and talked about the puzzle piece of Shui Yao's life. His story, his deeds, his confusion and struggle in the past, his ignorance and muddle-headedness, his struggling sword at this moment, his fierce roar. Sun Lang was telling the story of Brother Jean. He wanted more people to hear Brother Jean's story. Not only that, but he also wanted all the people who heard this story to sincerely recognize Shui Yao's choice, his behavior, and what he said back then. To recognize the roar he once made. To recognize the fact that the 300,000 people of the Great Barren Mountain refused to admit. The emperor was wrong. The girl's eyes were already hazy with tears. Even Lu Shujin, who had always had a heart of stone, was moved to tears. Zhao Yunlong, of course, was crying like a dog. In Luo and Miss Zhao, the two little girls, needless to say, were also crying. Even Creel's eyes were red as he praised. This is simply an epic story, the purest and most flawless comrade in arms. His bravery and choice should be sung by bards all over the world and praised by future generations. Everyone was very moved. Obviously, the girls had no resistance to this kind of life and death story, especially when it was a story between two men. It was not surprising that the men's soul-stirring and tragic stories could move the girls to tears. After all, women were not only emotional creatures, but also scavengers. They were not very resistant to the subtle feelings between men. Therefore, some of the popular male stories in Sun Lang's hometown on Earth had a large female audience. However, it was very strange that some male readers would also be excited by this kind of story. For example, if there was a description of the interaction between the main character and a male supporting character in a very serious story that was suitable for both young and old, a group of obviously male readers would definitely shout in the thread. This kind of behavior was very suspicious, and people could not help but doubt their sexual orientation. Of course, this matter had nothing to do with the author. Sometimes, when an author wrote a certain kind of story, it did not mean that he liked that kind of story. You could not say that a person who liked to write erotic stories was a rapist, and you could not say that a person who liked to write erotic stories was long out yin. Would literary creation be so shallow? The reason why such a story was written was either to criticize reality or to ridicule the past and present. The author wrote a story based on his creative intention, and the readers liked the story based on their sexual orientation. Inluo wiped her tears with a handkerchief and glared at Sun Lang. She said in a crying tone, "You only know how to cheat people's tears." "I didn't ask you to say this," Sun Lang sighed. "In fact, this story is just a foreshadowing of the next thing," Inluo said with tears in her eyes. "What is it?" "Well, Brother Jean has left, but he left a widow in her prime." Inluo immediately had infinite sympathy and affection for the widow. That sister's husband saved Sun Lang's life, but left her alone for the rest of her life. "This kindness must be repaid," she said. "But what kind of trouble did that sister encounter and need help? We should pay her a visit and thank her. Her husband saved you, and this kindness should be repaid to her. Where is she now?" Sun Lang was silent for a moment, and then said hesitantly, "If I say that she is now locked in our basement, will you misunderstand something?" Chapter 1162. Sun Lang had the ability to change the atmosphere with just one sentence. Just a moment ago, they were still full of sadness as they recalled bits and pieces of their old friend, which triggered the sentimental thoughts of the girls. Then, the atmosphere took a sharp turn. The pitiful widow who had lost her husband seemed to be living a happy life in the basement of General Sun Lang's luxurious residence in the Shinsei. Every day, she ate a high-protein diet and probably had many toys to play with. There was a murderous aura. After their brains understood the meaning of this sentence, the girls gradually raised their eyebrows. Their sinister eyes looked back and forth on Sun Lang's body, as if they were judging where it was easy to bite or cut. But soon, someone sneered out loud. When the others heard this, they were startled at first and then immediately understood. The murderous aura dissipated at an extremely fast speed. They all shook their heads and looked at Sun Lang with subtle or sighing gazes, as if they were caring for a single, straight man. Inluo patted Sun Lang's shoulder and said gently, "Sun Lang, let's not talk about other things for the time being. When it comes to matters between men and women, we actually all believe in you." Zhao Feihuang held back his laughter and said in a more tactful tone, "Sun Lang, did you detain her because something happened to her, or do you want to protect her?" Lu Shujin recovered from her surprise and said lightly, "Obviously, because of Sun Lang, she lost her husband. This is an indisputable fact. I'm afraid someone took advantage of this hatred." Zhao Yunlong nodded and said, "I'm afraid they gave her false hope." Sun Lang said helplessly, "You all trust me so much, it really makes me both sad and happy." Everyone laughed. Sun Lang shook his head and sighed. "Yes, this is what makes it difficult for me." Before Inluo and the others came to the capital, there were some things that Sun Lang could only suppress in his heart and bear alone. Now, he finally had a channel to confide in, such as the softness in his heart, his hesitation and confusion. He talked about some things related to Shen Yaohua. This strong and stubborn widow seemed to have a lot of things on her mind and secrets. She and Sun Lang were as calm as water, and they kept their distance from each other several times. They had a wonderful tacit understanding that separated them by a layer of barrier, and a declaration that they finally broke off their relationship. She seemed to be on the emperor's side, and the devil claimed that he could revive her husband. When everyone heard this, half of them felt pity for him, and the other half sighed. This woman really had a hard life. But sighing was one thing. Zhao Feihuang had a heart of stone. She didn't have any friendship with Shui Yao, and she didn't have Yin Luo's sentimental sympathy. Her heart had long been hardened to a very, very hard state. "Sun Lang, you've given in several times. You've already shown extreme benevolence. Even if that Zhang Gu'er's spirit in heaven saw this, he would have nothing to say. That Shen Yaohua is also unreasonable. In the final analysis, her husband was killed by the emperor. She even mixed with the royal family. I'm afraid she's already gone crazy." She waved her hand fiercely. "Moreover, now that we've entered the capital, Sun Lang, you have a lot of harem to look after. If you keep her in the mansion, She will undoubtedly be a great threat. It's better to kill her. I'm just kidding. I know you can't bear to do it, but keeping her in a mansion is not a long-term plan. Speaking of this, Miss Zhao glanced at Yin Luo and then leaned close to Sun Lang. She whispered in a volume that everyone could hear, I have a plan. How about abolishing her martial arts and sending her to Mingzhou? Let the Zhang family secretly send this woman to Li Hua's territory. Let her drink vodka for 3 to 5 years and let a group of rough Russian swindlers brainwash her. Then she will become a big-breasted, brainless idiot like Zhang Yinluo. This is called repeating the same trick. With Yinluo as a sample, it will definitely succeed. Yinluo roared. What nonsense are you talking about? Exactly. Courier continued. The great raging flame theocracy is a brilliant place where supreme light and heat gather. There are devout believers, brave warriors, and wise priests, but there has never been a big-breasted, brainless idiot. This woman was like this before she came to St. Yuri Castle. Yinluo stomped his feet and said angrily, Hey, it was strange. Whether it was Miss Zhao alone or with a few more people, Yinluo had been the target of everyone's teasing from the beginning to the end. All right. We can't let her go for the time being. Sun Lang said, In addition to the considerations of the overall situation, there is also my personal selfishness. In addition, there is another important reason. This attracted the women's attention. Miss Zhao asked curiously, What's the reason? Sun Lang smiled mysteriously. Zhao Feihuang was still next to him and hadn't left yet. Therefore, he became playful and whispered the secret to the girl's small, sparkling ears. Shen Yaohua had a mysterious power. It could offset Sun Lang's great protective power, so that he could touch women freely. Of course, it was only for a period of time. Her sweetheart whispering in her ears made Miss Zhao's heart jump for joy. But after hearing half of it, this eldest miss of Marquis Jinggan Fu was already stunned. She almost didn't dare to believe her own ears. In an instant, she felt that the world was filled with sunshine and flower petals. Everything was singing. An unimaginable joy and trembling filled her body. The feeling in this instant was much, much better than being touched by Sun Lang. She screamed out, filled with infinite surprise and joy. It was like a 40 to 50-year-old bald middle-aged man who was powerless saw a mysterious advertisement on a telephone pole. An old military doctor was waving at him, and a sexual scholar was smiling at him. Finally, she could finally be beep, beep, and beep by Sun Lang. Hey, what's with your face that's filled with heat? Yinluo ridiculed with a face full of displeasure. Zhao Feihuang had her hands on her hips as she glared at her, her eyes filled with the joy of a proletariat turning the tables and becoming the master. It was too difficult. This woman's monopoly on Sun Lang was finally going to end. Very quickly, being able to touch Sun Lang freely would be the innate right of every woman. No one could take it away. No one could take it away. She proudly shouted, Dog official, your rule is over. Yinluo said in confusion, Huh. Sun Lang smiled as he watched everything in front of him. Shen Yaohua was his trump card. Yes, even if she was exposed, as long as her use was revealed, then everyone would be shocked and shaken by this huge good news. They would definitely be too lazy to investigate the other details. Miss Zhao then announced this good news to everyone. Shen Yaohua could temporarily block Sun Lang's great protective power that made people's balls ache. During this period of time, Sun Lang could freely touch any woman. There would be no floods, nor would there be any dike bursting phenomenon. The flow could be controlled, the valve could be adjusted, and the trickle would be endless. There would be no more destructive development. Sustainable development was the absolute truth. Sun Lang smiled as he looked at the girls present, ready to welcome the surprised shouts and tears of joy, as if he had done a great deed. Yes, it was me. I found the path to sexual happiness for everyone. However, there was a murderous aura. Other than Miss Zhao, who was still cheering, everyone else looked at Sun Lang. There was something wrong with the look in their eyes. He twisted his body. What's wrong? You don't believe me? Lu Shujin said lightly. Ah, is it true? Sun Lang said decisively. Yes, it's definitely true. Then, Inluo narrowed his eyes, and his tone became sinister. How do you know that Xin Yaohua can offset your curse? In other words, who did you try it with? Sun Lang widened his eyes in shock. Is this the focus of attention? Nonsense. Aunt Lu was in front, Inluo was behind, and Sun Lang was surrounded. Lu Shujin said aggressively. I remember you once told a boring joke about what the first person who discovered that milk could be drunk did to the cows. Inluo chuckled behind them. Then, when you found out that Sister Shun could offset your curse, what were you going to do to the girl who was lucky enough to escape? Why did you do that? At this moment, Ping Yang, who had been silent all this time, suddenly exclaimed, attracting everyone's attention. She blushed and glared at Sun Lang with resentment in her eyes. The tips of her two hands were pressed together, tapping and tapping. I see. Master has such an ability. Why didn't you say so earlier? Her tone was full of shyness and rebuke, and she seemed to be crying with joy. A drop of tear even seeped out of the corner of her eye. I only found out about this after hearing from the sisters today. That's great. It's not Ping Yang who became perverted. It's because of you. Master, Sun Lang covered his face and shouted. Ping Yang, ah, Lu Shujin sneered. So the victim is Princess Ping Yang. You're quite brave. If you didn't accidentally discover Xin Yaohua's special ability, what would you have done to the princess? It's not like that. Ping Yang's tone was very innocent. Every time I touch Master, my body becomes very shy and strange, and Master didn't find anything wrong with me. As for the girl Master mentioned, she tapped her lips with her finger and thought for a while, ignoring Sun Lang's desperate gaze. Suddenly, her eyes lit up, and she laughed. It should be Miss Ku. She had a good relationship with Master before, but a few days ago, her attitude suddenly changed, and she became very angry for no reason, as if Master was her enemy who killed her father. That girl should be talking about Miss Ku. Several people sneered. Well, who is Miss Ku? Sun Lang held his head and shouted. It's a child who made a mistake during cultivation. You all know me. I have no interest in that kind of childlike body. You have no interest, but you did that kind of thing to others. Scum. That's another crime. I didn't expect Sun Lang to become such a person. Why? Why did it become like this? He had a perfect plan, and he had broken through so many obstacles. So why did it become like this? Sun Lang raised his hands and said in shame, I was wrong. I admit my mistake. I accept the law. In the end, Mr. Sun brought everyone to visit Madame Xin Yaohua. The servants and maids they met along the way all bowed and made way, looking at their master with reverence. Every inch of land in the capital was worth an inch of gold, and it was the heart of the world. To be able to own such a huge mansion in the core of the capital was already enough to show the power and status of the master. And the status of the master was directly related to the status and prospects of the servants, which was enough for them to have 120% respect and reverence for the new master. Of course, if they were more well-informed, for example, they would understand the ferocious actions of the master when facing the important ministers and kings in the imperial court. Their mood would not be so optimistic. But now, they were very respectful, and they didn't know what kind of terrifying mental storm the awe-inspiring master had gone through just now. The girls clustered around Sun Lang and walked in the direction of the inner court. When they were far away from the group of servants, Inluo said softly, I don't mean to blame you, and I don't want to use this as an excuse to throw a tantrum. After all, it's not easy for you to be alone in the capital, and we all know that. But an innocent woman who has nothing to do with you was turned into this by your ability. It's very bad for both you and her, right? After such a thing happened, do you want to take responsibility, or do you want to pretend that nothing happened? If you want to take responsibility, it's fine if it's 1 or 2. But what about 3, 4, 5, or 6? It's fine for you to pretend that nothing happened, but if you meet a chaste woman who can't think straight and resolutely commits suicide to prove her innocence, I don't believe that you won't feel guilty. Even if she's married, what you did to her will still be a thorn in her heart. It's too unfair to her and her husband. Think about it. Isn't it reasonable? Yes. Sun Lang also whispered. That's why I've been very self-restrained these 2 years. You also know that when I first met you, I had to make 3 rules with you. In Luo took the initiative to hold his hand and smiled slightly, as if she also thought of the silly past when they first met. She whispered, I know that you've already done very well, but that Ms. Ku, Sun Lang replied. There was a problem with her reverse practice of martial arts, and she returned to her youth overnight. Her body solidified into a child's state, and she will be like this for the rest of her life. Only a strong person with extremely profound cultivation and the ability to enter this subtle state can help her unblock her meridians. I can treat her, but I can't touch her. But with Shun Yaohua, this can be done. I helped her unblock her meridians and relieve her pain. This kindness is equivalent to giving her a new life. It will definitely be able to clear the karma of that day. So, I have a clear conscience and let her have no worries. You're really good at convincing yourself. However, if you have a clear conscience, whether she can have no worries is another matter. You still don't understand a girl's heart. In Luo suddenly thought of something. Wait a minute, that Miss Kun now has the body of a child, but if her injuries are healed and her body recovers, Sun Lang looked at her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. You seem to have become a little strange, have I? Although In Luo said this, her face turned red and she lowered her head. Of course I have, she muttered, because Sun Lang didn't hear the rest of the words clearly, because In Luo didn't say it at all. Miss Zhao sneered at the right time. Get tired of it as much as you want, because not long after, I can also get tired of Sun Lang very intimately. Ha 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 ha. She didn't know if Sun Lang understood this hint. Anyway, Sun Lang didn't say anything about it. He pointed to the building in front of them. We're here. In Luo suddenly frowned and felt an inexplicable strange feeling. But this strange feeling quickly disappeared, as if it was an illusion, but also as if there was really something. It was calling her. Chapter 1163. Is that all? Zhao Feihuang tentatively reached out her hand to Sun Lang. Her expression was a little excited. She was indeed very excited. Whether or not the great protection power was blocked, she would not be at a disadvantage. If it failed, it would naturally be something to be happy about. Even if it did not fail, she would still feel good. Therefore, Miss Zhao directly held Sun Lang's hand. Nothing happened. Everything was normal. There was neither a valve malfunction nor a dam collapse. The flow control system was online normally. It was really a historical moment. Miss Zhao's curious and tentative expression completely turned into ecstasy. She directly opened her hands and shouted happily, I want a kiss. I want a hug. I want to be raised high. Immediately after, she was grabbed by the collar by Zhao Yunlong and put behind her. Chao Patao pounced on Sun Lang like a dog. Oh no, that was not right. Anyway, Chao Patao was very excited as she hugged and lifted Sun Lang up. She directly made a Simba pose. Sun Lang patted her head and said helplessly, Put me down. Lu Shujin did not say anything. She had already made enough money in silence. Creole, on the other hand, was more hesitant. She was not that familiar with Sun Lang, nor was she as obsessed with him as Miss Zhao. Mao Mei had not found her place yet, so she could only ask tentatively, Why don't you touch me? Get off me, you Russian. Miss Zhao stomped her feet and said, Sun Lang is mine. I was the one who did it first. You all have to line up. Ping Yang whispered, Teacher, I also want traitor. Sun Lang glared at Ping Yang fiercely, so fierce that she shrank her neck. She looked very weak, pitiful, and helpless. Zhang Yinluo had been wandering outside, watching the play here. He looked a little lonely. Xin Yaohua had been paying attention to her. Although she was mentally prepared, Xin Yaohua was still taken aback when she saw Sun Lang bring in several women with different styles and styles. She was engaged to Brother Zhang. The husband and wife were harmonious and respectful to each other. They had always known each other's hearts and loved each other endlessly. Their hearts could not tolerate anyone else. Brother Zhang never mentioned the matter of taking a concubine. She also felt that husband and wife should not be distracted by other things in their love. Therefore, when she saw Sun Lang's posture, she felt somewhat disdainful. Among Big Radish's many female friends, she noticed Yin Luo at first glance. There was no other reason. That was because this girl had the biggest breasts among them. Well, that was only one of the reasons. Secondly, this plump girl had a kind of temperament that Xin Yaohua was very concerned about. She was calm and graceful, and for some reason, she made people feel close to her. Yin Luo noticed her gaze and smiled politely. Xin Yaohua asked curiously, "You don't want to give it a try?" Yin Luo forced a smile and shook his head. "No, I'm not the same," she politely said with a hint of awkwardness because she did not know how to talk to Xin Yaohua. She had a respectful and pitiful attitude towards this widow, but the other party chose to be hostile to Sun Lang. "I see." Xin Yaohua did not pursue the matter in detail. She nodded and said softly, "I don't mean to offend or sow discord. There are so many people. Don't you feel unhappy?" Yin Luo's eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. He just shook his head. "I don't know. I only know that now is not the time to talk about these feelings. Sun Lang once promised us that after everything is over, he will give us a satisfactory answer. I choose to believe him." "I see." Sun Lang and Miss Zhao were laughing on the side, while Shun Yaohua and Yin Luo stood alone on the side, away from the center of the hustle and bustle, talking calmly. Yin Luo looked at the side of Shun Yaohua's calm face that carried a trace of sorrow. This woman had lost her true love and had spent nearly 3 long years in loneliness and sorrow. Day after day, night after night, it was the same. "I don't mean to offend. Sun Lang said something about you." Yin Luo said softly, "As far as I know, people can't be resurrected after death. Not only Hutu, but Lihua is also known as the holy fire descending from the sky and eternal theocracy. It founded the country with religion and has a flame secret technique that is close to magic. However, there is no legend of resurrecting the dead. The ingenious machinery of the country of acute metal is unparalleled in the world. They can even peel off the human brain and use it as the core of the mechanical beast's action, but they can't create or resurrect souls out of thin air. The Greenwood spirit is good at life technology, and the Black Water spirit advocates spiritual power. However, even if they reach the peak of their respective fields, they can't touch the power of the Creator. It is simply a taboo for humans." Speaking of this, her face showed a solemn expression. Her usual gentle and leisurely expression was swept away. She said in a rare, solemn tone, "Although it is cruel, please don't have any illusions and be used by bad people." Xin Yaohua just smiled. Although Yin Luo was denying her obsession and her request, she was not angry. There's an old saying that the onlookers see the game more clearly than the players involved. It's just like how people can always be reasonable when they talk about their neighbor's family affairs. It's just like how people can always be reasonable when they talk about everything in a market from the perspective of a bystander. But if similar things happen to their own family, they will be deeply involved and become the people that they hate the most. She said softly, "That's probably what I am like. Girl, the reason why you can persuade me with rationality and wisdom is that you have never tasted failure. People who fall into the water will crazily grasp everything they can touch, even if it is just an insignificant straw. The onlookers and the commentators after the event will only laugh at this kind of stupidity, but they don't know the desperation of the person at that time." Yin Luo bit her lips, but after all, a straw can't save a drowning person. Xin Yaohua still shook her head. "Maybe it just looks like a straw?" Yin Luo looked at the persistent Xin Yaohua, and a helpless thought arose in her heart. The onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved. Standing on the shore, she had never experienced the feeling of loss. How could she understand Xin Yaohua's feelings? But in this case, she sighed. "Sun Lang will be very sad." Xin Yaohua said indifferently, "Is that so?" Yin Luo nodded and said, "Sun Lang cares about you very much. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left you here." The married woman shook her head. "No, you're wrong. He doesn't care about me. What he cares about is you and himself. What he cares about is the guilt he feels toward my husband. If I'm just a woman who has nothing to do with him, he wouldn't care about my life or death. Sun Lang, who was playing with the girls in the distance, paused imperceptibly. Shin Yaohua chuckled and said, "You see, even if he is laughing like this, most of his attention is still focused here. I dare say that if I make a move on you, he will not hesitate to cut off my head." Yin Luo sighed silently. Being in the same room with Sun Lang's martial arts, how could he not hear the content of the conversation between the two people? The conversation between her and Shun Yaohua was actually a conversation between the three people. Now, that Shun Yaohua exposed this matter, it meant that the conversation could no longer continue. This married woman was still stubbornly clinging to her own way. Sun Lang calmed down and turned his head to look at this side. Miss Zhao and the others also stopped making noise. In this case, Madam should continue to stay here. My promise is still valid, and so is my threat. Please, before you make any decision. He paused for a moment, as if hesitating whether he should bare his fangs in front of Yin Luo and the others. But soon, Sun Lang made a decision. Think about your family members who are still alive. Everyone was completely solemn. Chow Patao and Aunt Lu were fine, but for the others, it was really the first time that they heard Sun Lang use such a serious tone to say such terrible words. The murderous aura that was emitted was so condensed that it was impossible to doubt his determination and will. He really issued a death warning. "I know." Shin Yaohua just calmly responded. "It's good that you know," Sun Lang said lightly. "In this case, we won't disturb you anymore. Madam, please feel at ease and stay here. We will leave now. I hope you can think it through soon." He turned and left. The girls also filed out. All kinds of gazes fell on Shin Yaohua. Some were puzzled, some were hostile, and some were sighing. But she calmly accepted all of them. Yin Luo was the last to go out. He didn't say anything and just sighed softly. The door closed with a bang. The power of the earth, water, fire, and gold holy swords rose at the same time, intertwining into an indestructible cage. The sword energy surrounded the walls, airtight. On the way back, Sun Lang didn't say a word. Everyone looked at each other, and their gazes all fell on Yin Luo. Yin Luo hesitated for a moment and said softly, "It's okay. No matter what you do, we will stand on your side." Sun Lang returned a gentle gaze and looked at everyone. "I know. Let's not talk about this. You just arrived today, so there should be a grand banquet to celebrate. Go and prepare now, but this is only a temporary joy. After today, the storm will come, but we will defeat all the enemies in front of us, no matter who they are, no matter what their intentions and purposes are." Of course, it must be so. Shinto province became lively for the first time in a long time. The workers from the Zhang family and Marquis Jingon Fu quickly adapted to their roles and operated the enormous Shinto province. The commander-in-chief had a lot of influence, so he sent people to pay for all the ingredients for the banquet from the imperial household. The officials of the imperial household had some complaints, so Android, who went to negotiate, glared at them and said, "What's wrong? You can't bear to let the crown prince's teacher eat some of the Li family's rice?" And so it was settled. They didn't need to purchase anything at all. Whatever they lacked, they just needed to borrow from the imperial household. They didn't even need to sign an IOU. The chefs used all kinds of top-notch ingredients specially provided by the imperial household. They were all speechless and had some sort of misunderstanding about the master's status in Jianghu and the emperor's favor. When the sky darkened, the lively banquet began. The officials of the imperial court who went out of the city to welcome the Ming Zhou carriages all arrived. Sun Lang looked around at everyone and seemed very satisfied. He nodded and praised the loyal and righteous officials of the imperial court. Not a single one is missing. They are all here. Everyone roared with laughter and shouted at the top of their lungs, "Commander-in-chief, how come there aren't any scars on your face?" Sun Lang glared and said, "What nonsense! Who dares to hit me? Who dares to hit me? Who dares to hit me?" The banquet was arranged neatly, and the dishes were sent up like flowing water. Young Miss Zhao was well-trained, and the servants sent by the Zhang family were also smart and capable. Everything was handled in an orderly manner and didn't seem unfamiliar at all. Young Miss Zhao walked back and forth like a butterfly through flowers, calmly directing and greeting the guests. She had the appearance of a hostess, and Yin Luo excitedly transformed into a Tianyuan fangirl, grabbing the various Tianyuan officials and asking them all sorts of questions. Lu Shujin and Zhao Yunlong each had their own old friends. Courier hugged the imperial household's wine and drank to his heart's content. Ping Yang was afraid that Sun Lang would come to settle accounts with her and shrunk her head back to hide in the crowd. Sun Lang looked at the lively scene in front of him and revealed a knowing smile. It had been a long time since he had been so happy. Everyone was gathered together. Everyone had good intentions. Everyone had smiles on their faces. Such a scene was, without a doubt, worth protecting. Yes, worth protecting. In the near future, there wouldn't be too many leisurely and playful moments like this. The conflict with the Emperor was irreconcilable. The devil was plotting a mysterious and enormous scheme. He wanted to get rid of these obstructing tigers one by one. Only then would the days of peace finally arrive. But tonight, let's be happy and have some fun. He loudly said, "Come, I'm happy today. I'll drink a few cups with you." Everyone was startled and then roared in response. The atmosphere instantly became lively, because everyone in the court knew that Sun Lang was one of the few generals of Tianyuan who didn't like to drink. He preferred to drink all kinds of fruit drinks that only women would drink. Moreover, he beat up all those who laughed at him for drinking fruit drinks that only women would drink and hung them on a flagpole to blow in the wind. After all, this was human nature. When people accepted the setting that Commander of War didn't like to drink, the fact that Commander of War is willing to have a drink with me became the highest praise and honor. It was like an author who never updated and would occasionally update. If he said that he had updated 3 times today, the readers would probably be moved to tears and ecstatically offer him rewards, monthly votes, and blades. Hearing Sun Lang say this, everyone excitedly shouted for wine to be served, showing their wild ambition to get the Commander of War drunk. However, this was another sad part of human nature. Wine belonged to water and fire. Sun Lang carried the power of the 2 great holy swords of water and fire. Even if he was stuffed to death, he would never die drunk. But when the atmosphere was so lively, who cared about this? Everyone rushed forward, toasting and urging him to drink. Sun Lang didn't refuse anyone. The atmosphere gradually heated up, and the noise never stopped. No one expected that the Commander of War would give them so much face tonight. Sun Lang drank a large bowl of imperial wine, exhaled a long breath, and revealed a smile that was neither drunk nor drunk. Drinking wine was good. Drinking wine would make one drunk, and when one was drunk, one would cause trouble and be unreasonable. With the excuse of being drunk, who would accuse a drunkard of pestering endlessly? As for who would he cause trouble when he was drunk? After drinking happily for a long time, someone from the outer yard quickly ran over and said to Miss Zhao in the distance, "Miss, someone from the palace is here. They're here." Chapter 1164. The night was silent. Unlike the bustling night markets of the capital, Shinto province was located in the most noble core of the capital. It was where the important officials of the court and the noble families of the Empress Dowager lived. It was very quiet at night. Pedestrians stopped, merchants were not in business, and every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. The emissaries sent by the palace had already entered this area. Feng Yongting raised his head and looked at the flickering flames in the direction of Shinto province, not far away. Hearing the faint laughter, he sighed silently. It had been less than half a month since the emperor was assassinated. This once popular and high-ranking eunuch of the Directorate of War and War was already showing signs of old age. On the day the emperor was assassinated, Feng Yongting was outside the palace arguing endlessly with Sun Lang. As the emperor's servant and guardian, it was already a great dereliction of duty for him to not be able to protect the emperor. At the time of the incident, he was with the well-known traitor Sun Lang, which made Empress and the Empress Dowager hate him even more. Therefore, after Li Guangyuan fell into a coma, Feng Yongting, who had returned to the palace, was removed from the core of power in the palace. He was no longer in the limelight, and his presence was greatly diminished. When the emperor woke up, he was not allowed to serve at the emperor's bedside. The Empress Dowager did not even allow him to get close to the bedchamber. Sun Lang poured a barrel of oil on the fire and said a few good words for Feng Yongting in front of the two concubines, saying that Feng Yongting was innocent. Empress was so angry that she found an excuse and sent Feng Yongting to chop firewood in the department of burning firewood. In an instant, he fell from the clouds into the pile of firewood. It should be known that the 24 offices had different powers and positions. The Directorate of War and War was in charge of the affairs of the eunuchs, while the Department of Burning Firewood was in charge of the internal palace's firewood. Feng Yongting had met with such a calamity, which was really unfortunate. In the past few days, he had been on the hot search list of the inner palace's Weibo. Now that the emperor had recovered and was in charge of affairs again, his first order was to summon Feng Yongting, who was chopping firewood. Thunder and rain were the emperor's grace. One word could bring people back from the quagmire to the clouds. The emperor was the god of the inner palace, controlling the life and death and future of everyone in the palace. As a result, Eunuch Feng was once again placed in an important position by the emperor and was doubly revered and loved by the palace servants. The emperor trusted him and gave him a glorious and difficult mission, sending him out of the palace to handle an important matter. At this moment, Feng Yongting didn't have the slightest bit of joy from returning to the peak of his life. If he could, he would rather continue chopping firewood at the firewood division. Unfortunately, the monarch's orders were hard to disobey. The eunuch beside her said in a gentle and flattering tone, "Ancestor, why don't I go and knock on the door? Don't worry, I know the severity of the matter and will definitely not be rude." Feng Yongting pinched the imperial edict in his sleeve and sighed silently again. Etiquette? Sun Lang was not a person who cared about etiquette. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, "There's no need. I'll go myself." Ignoring the slightly changed expressions of his entourage, he floated forward. The crimson robe of the eunuch of the inner palace flashed with conspicuous colors in the dim light of the night. The eunuchs and guards behind him had no choice but to follow. The steward guarding the front of the manor hurriedly came forward to welcome them. The imperial capital was deep and the power was intertwined. As guests from Mingzhou, they had just arrived and were cautious and respectful of everything. Moreover, from the way they dressed, they were clearly people from the palace. The steward bowed deeply. "Shinto Province. Greetings, noble. You flatter me." Feng Yongting looked at the grand and imposing Shinto Province and said softly, "I, Feng Yongting, have come by the emperor's edict to announce something and asked to see General Sunday, the imperial palace, the emperor, and the imperial edict." For these natives who had been born under the dragon banner and grew up in the empire, the majesty of the imperial power had always been supreme. They held great reverence for the imperial power and the court. Hearing that an emissary from the palace had come, their minds were immediately shaken and their minds were thrown into disarray. However, they were still elites trained by Miss Zhao. Although they were disoriented, they didn't panic. They remembered Miss Zhao's teachings before she left and used it as their heartbeat for their future actions. The son-in-law was the heavens, and they would listen to everything he said. Therefore, he hurriedly apologized. "Noble, please wait for a moment. Allow me to report." After saying this, he still felt a little uneasy. After all, the meaning behind his words was to have these messengers from the palace, who had come to deliver the imperial edict, wait at the door. No matter how he thought about it, it was somewhat disrespectful to leave the messengers waiting outside. But to the steward's surprise, these palace servants did not show the slightest bit of anger. Instead, they looked as if it was natural. Was this the son-in-law's despotic power? He was shocked and sighed in his heart. He hurriedly entered and immediately found Miss Zhao to report this matter. Zhao Feihuang was meeting with a group of old generals of Tianyuan. Hearing this, she frowned and said indifferently, "Men are in charge of external affairs and women are in charge of internal affairs. In the future, don't come to me for such external affairs. Go to the master first. Tell the others to remember this." The steward was shocked and lowered his head in fear. "Yes," Miss Zhao said indifferently, "go." The steward didn't dare to say anything more. He quickly walked over to Sun Lang, who was drinking heartily. Smelling the smell of alcohol that filled the air, he muttered in his heart, "Good, no, master drank too much." What should he do with the decree? Just as he was hesitating, Sun Lang had already put down the wine jug and looked at him with narrowed eyes. "What are you looking at?" This steward was an elite of the Marquis of Jing'an's Fu. He was the son of a servant who had served the Zhao family for several generations and had a deep impression of Sun Lang. He had once personally participated in the Battle of Jing'an's Herring and had always revered the son-in-law. Seeing that Sun Lang's tone wasn't right, he immediately said, "A noble from the palace who calls himself Feng Yongting is waiting outside, saying that there is an imperial edict." Then he saw the general reveal a very twisted smile. As a native of this world, he wasn't someone from Sun Lang's hometown. Of course, he didn't know that the general's beautiful smile at this moment came from a famous basketball superstar in his homeland. There was no doubt that those with high martial arts could do whatever they wanted. Back on Earth, although Sun Lang had used a large number of emojis, they were merely pictures. But now, his martial arts were so strong that there was no second person in the world. He had already reached the realm of minute details, and his control of his body was so precise that it was to the extent of every hair on his body. In other words, he could control the changes in every muscle on his face and perfectly simulate the highlight moments of the internet's various expression giants. Moreover, he had both form and spirit and was able to replicate them to perfection. Not only did he have Curator King's straightforwardness, he also had Brother Wushui's arrogance. Of course, this kind of ability was a bit of a pain in the ass and wasn't used in many situations. After all, General Sun's own expression management was very good and there was no need to imitate others. But now, he was pretending to be drunk, so this kind of ability was very useful. Wearing Mr. Yao's warm smile, Sun Lang opened his drunken eyes and said in pleasant surprise, "What? Old phone came. Why didn't you say so earlier?" He casually pulled the steward to the side and rushed out with a wine jar in his arms. The steward almost fell. When he steadied himself, he saw the general chasing after the wind. He opened his mouth and wanted to chase after him, but someone pressed down on his shoulder. It was an adult that he didn't know. "No need to go. Let him act." Feng Yongting and the others were waiting patiently when they heard a burst of hurried and deliberate footsteps. Immediately, a fishy wind blew in their faces, and the strong smell of alcohol swept past like a gale. It rushed into everyone's noses and made them feel sour. It was as if 1,000 jars of strong alcohol were smashed at the same time. In this fishy wind, a figure rushed forward. Old Feng. Feng Yongting only saw a blur in front of his eyes, and soon his neck was hugged by Sun Lang. The strong smell of alcohol surrounded him, and Sun Lang's hearty, drunken laughter was like the cry of an owl, filling his eardrums. "What are you doing here?" the general shouted. "Come, Huijiu." A large wine jar was directly placed on Eunuch Feng's head, and the alcohol inside flowed out, drenching Feng Yongting's crimson robe. The accompanying eunuchs and guards were frightened. They wanted to go forward and stop him, but they didn't dare. General Shansei was obviously drunk. When he was not drunk, he was fierce and powerful, roaring in the imperial city. Now he was drunk and crazy. If he didn't like you, he would punch you until your brain burst open. Who would you cry to? Feng Yongting's head shook and the wine jar shattered. He didn't wipe the alcohol off his face and let the spicy wine flow down his face. He said expressionlessly, "General, His Majesty intends to bestow Princess Pingyang to you. I came tonight to..." Sun Lang blinked his hazy, drunken eyes. "Who is Pingyang?" Chapter 1165. The Shinsei general's eyes were hazy, and he even burped. "Who is Ping Yong?" he asked drunkenly. Feng Yongting had a helpless look on his face, as if he already knew. He continued to answer in a methodical manner. "Princess Ping Yong is His Majesty's 7th daughter. She's gentle, pleasant, and beautiful." Sun Lang's eyes widened. "So many daughters? How can the emperor give birth to more children than a sow?" The faces of the guests from the imperial palace turned ashen. Hearing the legend was one thing, but seeing it with their own eyes was another. This general of divine strategies was so audacious that it was truly shocking. Feng Yongting said calmly, "The general is drunk." Sun Lang clapped his hands and laughed. "I'm not drunk. I'm sober. Hey, you all saw it. I said that the emperor is a sow, and eunuch Feng didn't refute it. You didn't refute it either. You're all not loyal." Everyone wished that they could wrap their ears with 3 layers of earlobes. Feng Yongting said in a low voice. "Sun Lang." His tone was very complicated and low. Perhaps even eunuch Feng himself didn't know what he was feeling at this moment. There was weakness, confusion, and pleading in this call. Sun Lang looked straight at him. The drunkenness on his face dissipated, but his eyes became very clear. "Old Feng," he said, "what are you doing here?" This question was the same as the previous one, but the meaning was completely different. Feng Yongting understood it. He revealed a bitter smile. "The people in the palace are like caged birds. How can everything go according to their own wishes? In fact, the world is the same. No one is free, and everyone has to accept their fate. Only you are unhappy and want to tear this cage apart. Only you have such thoughts." Sun Lang said lightly, "I'm right." Feng Yongting shook his head. "No, that's only because you're the strongest. When you're not strong enough, you're also trapped in a cage. Like everyone else, you can't do what you want. You're no different from me." Sun Lang's eyes turned cold, but he didn't refute it. Actually, there was no way to refute it. Right now, he also believed in the theory of strength, or rather, he had always believed in the theory of strength. The experiences of these past few years had shattered all of the illusory dreams and beliefs of his youth. If he didn't have great power, he would have already died in the great desolate mountain. If he didn't have great power, he would still be wandering around the world at this moment, struggling at death's door. If he didn't have great power, how could he stand upright in the imperial capital and tell the emperor and his henchmen about his revenge? Perhaps that is the case. Sun Lang said, "I am the strongest, so I tore open the cage that bound me. Similarly, I can also tear open the cage for you." He regarded Feng Yongting's entourage as dead objects and said straightforwardly, "The reason I defended you in front of Empress before was to arouse his disgust and send you far away, lest you be dragged into the whirlpool and die without a corpse. You are not stupid. You should be able to see the crux of this matter and understand the principle of bravely retreating when the situation is critical. Now that the Emperor has sent you to do this, he is using our friendship. You have to stay out of this matter and not be manipulated by him. Listen to me, don't go back to the palace today. If you don't want to be in a difficult position, I will send you out of the capital tomorrow." Feng Yongting was silent. Soon after, he said, "Thank you for your kindness." The meaning behind his words was refusal. Sun Lang asked coldly, "What's wrong with you?" Eunuch Feng smiled imperceptibly. "You can tear open this cage for me, but the people in the world are not free. Can you tear it open for them? After the cage is broken, what should I do? I am in the royal palace and have been a bird in a cage since I was young. You have broken my cage and let me fly to a wider world, but where can I go?" Sun Lang sneered. "Aren't you cheap?" Feng Yongting's expression was calm. "Since I am a eunuch, of course I am cheap to the bone. I entered the palace when I was young and was trusted by the late emperor to grow up with the emperor. This debt has not been repaid." Sun Lang reached out and grabbed his collar. With a cold expression, he said, "So you don't even want a life? Life is not important." Eunuch Feng's voice did not fluctuate at all. "Kindness is important. You don't understand." Sun Lang spread out his fingers and pushed with force. Feng Yongting staggered back. The martial arts of the top master of the royal palace did not stabilize his body at all. Eunuch Feng sat down on the ground. His entire body was soaked with wine. He was like a drowned rat, truly lowly in the dust. Feng Yongting silently got up, and everyone watched in silence. They watched as this old man in the palace, who was no longer young, silently climbed up. He silently patted the dust off his body and silently walked forward. He repeated the same words and carried out his mission. The imperial edict is here. He said, the emperor intends to marry off his daughter. The general and Princess Pingyang are a match made in heaven. Before he finished speaking, the imperial edict in Feng Yongting's hand was grabbed by Sun Lang. With the force of his palm, the bright yellow satin was suddenly burned and instantly turned into ashes. Eunuch Feng's expression did not change. The general has received the imperial edict. I'll take your mother. Sun Lang grabbed his collar again and said gloomily, the emperor has evil intentions in marrying off his daughter. If I agree, I will fall into his trap. If I don't, he will take the opportunity to vent his anger on you, provoking and disgusting me. Feng Yongting, in this situation, do you think I should agree or not? Feng Yongting's face, which had aged significantly in recent days, was wooden. The general is the pillar of the country. If you can become in-laws with the royal family, you will ensure 100 years of peace and prosperity for the country. Sun Lang was so angry that he laughed instead. He kicked the old eunuch in the chest and sent him flying. Feng Yongting's body rolled a few times on the flat ground in front of the manor, like a pitiful old dog. The people in the palace who came with him were silent like cicadas in winter. No one dared to protest. No one dared to cross their bodies to stop them. If you want to die so much, I won't stop you. Sun Lang sternly said, I have always been mindful of our old relationship, so I have always been patient and accommodating, but you have always been considerate of your master. Since you have such deep feelings, I must fulfill your loyalty and filial piety. Feng Yongting lay on the ground and raised his white head. Is the general going to defy the imperial edict? Sun Lang squatted in front of him and smiled. Who said I was going to defy the imperial edict? Feng Yongting squeezed out a smile. Then the general is going to accept the imperial edict? It is an honor for the emperor to marry his daughter. The emperor's son-in-law is great. But marriage is a lifelong event. Not only do we have to consider the political significance, we also have to consider the compatibility between men and women. In other words, I have to at least meet Princess Pingyang, get to know each other, and fall in love with her. Is this the reason? Sun Lang's smile became brighter and brighter, and then he stretched out his hand. First, I have to know what she looks like, right? Do you have a picture? I mean a portrait? Feng Yongting was stunned for a moment, and then said, the general is joking. Don't you know Princess Pingyang? Sun Lang glared and said, of course I don't know. In fact, I didn't even know that the emperor had so many daughters. This big pig trotter. Moreover, the emperor said that he wants to marry his daughter to me, so he must first let me see what she looks like. If she is ugly, then the emperor is involved in false advertising and will be sued. He urged, what about Princess Pingyang? Where does she live? I want to go and see her. Feng Yongting smiled bitterly and said, isn't Princess Pingyang in your residence? Bullshit. Sun Lang stared and said, why would the emperor's daughter be in my residence? Why must she be in my residence? A dignified princess must be enjoying life in the palace. Why would she come to my residence and show her face in public? Why would you say such terrible things? The princess is in my residence? Are you saying that I abducted the princess? Is that possible? Or is it that the emperor took the initiative to send a princess to my side to be a servant girl? Is he crazy? Feng Yongting didn't expect Sun Lang to be so shameless. He slowly stood up and said helplessly, you are too lazy, Sun Lang said coldly. Am I familiar with you? You're just a lowly eunuch. How dare you talk to me like that? Eunuch Feng was tongue-tied. Sun Lang sneered a few times and shouted towards the door, throw me another jar of wine. A moment later, a strong wind whistled and a jar of wine flew across the sky and landed steadily in Sun Lang's hands. He opened the mud seal and looked at Feng Yongting with disdain, revealing his sinister smile. Don't you want to do things faithfully? I'll screw up this mission of yours first. Let's see how you're going to deal with it. Feng Yongting's face changed slightly and said, Sun Lang, what are you doing? What am I doing? Sun Lang laughed loudly. The emperor wants to marry his daughter to me. Of course, I have to thank him and ask him personally where my future wife is. Chapter 1166. Feng Yongting was very anxious. If there was one thing the emperor was most afraid of, it would be Sun Lang entering the palace to cause trouble. The situation in the court was delicate. Sun Lang had something to rely on. He and the emperor were in a temporary stalemate. No one could do anything to the other, and no one had the confidence to kill the other in one blow. However, although he did not have the means to quickly destroy the enemy, Sun Lang had a great advantage. He was shameless, and he did not have the burden of being an idol. He could cause trouble, and he had no bottom line. Thus, he could change his ways to cause trouble in the court and the palace. Although he did some trivial things, it was these trivial things that slapped the face of the imperial family time and time again, causing the emperor's prestige to continuously fall and causing the officials in the court to continuously develop disloyalty. This was because they had discovered the bravado and weakness of the imperial family and discovered Sun Lang's toughness and fearlessness. There was no such thing as pure loyalty in politics, only the consideration of interests, large and small. Sun Lang's series of dazzling performances had gradually made the various political powers realize something. It was the same this time. The emperor's subtle timing of the assassination was already very strange. During the process of recovery, the crown prince was in charge of the country, and Sun Lang was practically covering the sky with one hand. He had firmly suppressed Empress, who was listening to the law in the inner palace, and fiercely made his presence known. Now that the emperor had announced his recovery and was about to see things again, at this crucial moment, if Sun Lang went to the palace again and went crazy drunk, if it was not handled well, the emperor's face would be destroyed again. It was not stingy with a blow to the head. Feng Yongting shouted harshly, "You can't go." Sun Lang hugged the wine jar and turned to smile at him. The night wind blew at the corner of Sun Lang's clothes. General Shin's eyes alternated between hazy and sober. He raised his eyebrows and raised the corner of his mouth, smiling cheerfully. Then Feng Yongting, is the development of the situation so far within your master's plans and expectations? Feng Yongting's mind was greatly shaken. Taking advantage of Feng Yongting's distraction, Sun Lang dashed forward and closed in on him abruptly. His right hand was like the returning wind brushing willow. His inner force seeped out and sealed Feng Yongting in place. He sneered and said, "Just watch from here." With that, he activated his movement technique and disappeared into the darkness. Feng Yongting's entourage woke up from their dreams. Some of them wanted to deliver the news, while others wanted to release Feng Yongting from the shackles. However, a cold wind suddenly blew. More than 10 figures with different expressions stood in front of the Shinto province's gate, surrounding the entourage. The leader of the group said indifferently, "The general is not here." Feng Yongting's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, but he couldn't move at all. Sun Lang walked against the night wind, the coldness dispelling the smell of alcohol on his body. His body burned with a dry fire. Feng Yongting's visit tonight was only the beginning, and he already had a bad premonition and association. What made him angrier was the old eunuch's stubbornness and choice. There were always people in this world who didn't know what was good for them. There were always people who would rather hug the mast and be buried with a ship that was destined to sink. I tolerated everything, thought for him, and wanted to give him a hand so that he wouldn't be killed by the emperor. However, this old dog didn't know what was good for him. He clearly saw through the emperor's scheme, but he still helped his master to kill me. He couldn't tell right from wrong. He had the heart of a wolf and lungs of a dog. He was foolishly loyal. He was hopeless. Why did I save you? You didn't want to live. Why did I save you? You ought to have died. You clearly knew that I had outstanding military service, but I was wronged. You clearly knew that the Li family had wronged me. You clearly knew that I was innocent. But what did you do? You thought that I shouldn't pursue the matter. You thought that I didn't deserve to pursue the matter. You thought that my high position and generous salary meant that Li Guangyuan's imperial benevolence was vast and mighty. You thought that no matter what kind of shameful things he did, he was still the emperor. You thought that no one could pursue the emperor's mistakes. You thought that the emperor always had power beyond the law. You were dreaming. The greatest law in the world was called a life for a life. It was called a debt must be paid with money. It was called an eye for an eye. It was called a tooth for a tooth. The greatest principle in the world was only one word, and that was retribution. You have to pay for what you have done. If you want to stop me, you can't tell right from wrong. If you want to pay for him, you have to pay with your life. Wind blew under his feet. The gate of heaven influence was right in front of him. Sun Lang's body was burning, but his heart was cold. His soul seemed to have separated from his body. Using an absolutely cold-blooded mind to control his warm body, General Shansei crossed the Jinshui Bridge and arrived in front of the tall gate of heaven influence. He knocked on the heavy gate of heaven influence. He shouted with full strength, "Open the gate." His voice reverberated in all directions with a loud bang. After a moment of silence, a voice reluctantly shouted from behind the gate, "It's late at night. The imperial city is locked down. Whoever you are not allowed to make a ruckus. Leave quickly. If there's anything, report it tomorrow." Regardless of whether it was a minister or a commoner, it was a big crime to approach the imperial palace for no reason. Making a ruckus in the imperial city in the middle of the night was a capital crime. According to this law, the words that shouted at Sun Lang to stop were clearly too gentle. They revealed a deep humanistic warmth. However, Sun Lang was unmoved. He shouted, "Noisy, I am the son-in-law that His Majesty personally appointed. He said that he wants to marry his daughter to me. Since he wants me to be his son-in-law, then I am also a member of the imperial family. I'm going home, so I'm recognizing my family in advance. You dogs that guard the house dare to refuse your master outside the door. You really have guts. When I return, I'll report you to my father-in-law and have your mothers killed." After saying this, he stretched out his leg to kick the gate and shouted, "Father-in-law, father-in-law, Mount Tai, open the gate. Also, you're marrying your daughter to me, but I'm still the crown prince's teacher. How are we going to calculate the seniority? In that case, younger brother, why did you block me outside the door?" The imperial guards guarding the gate were about to go crazy. However, they still braced themselves and begged, "General, these words can't be spoken carelessly." Sun Lang shouted, "What's wrong? What's wrong? I'm drunk. I'm acting crazy. I don't even know what I'm saying. After a night's sleep, when I wake up tomorrow, I won't admit to anything I said tonight. Also, what nonsense did I say? Wasn't what I said the truth? Also, this has nothing to do with you." As he shouted, he kicked the gate. The gate of sky influence made a loud noise from his kicks. "Hurry up and King report that I want to see my father-in-law." With a drunken tone, he shouted at the top of his lungs, "I want to see my father-in-law. I want to see my future wife. What did you say about marrying Princess Pingyang to me? Where is she? Where is she? Whether she's beautiful or ugly, tall or short, fat or thin, I have to drag her out to sea. Where is she?" The general's tenor voice echoed outside the imperial city. It became louder and louder, spreading further and further. In front of Shinto province, Feng Yongting stood alone. His body didn't move at all. The inner strength of the empire's top experts was confining his body. "Don't go back." The person persuading him was Pongji. The general must be causing a ruckus at the palace gate right now. While he's drunk, he'll make the palace lose face again. Of course, this matter isn't over yet. Although I don't know what the emperor is planning, I'm sure the general won't let him have it easy. Anyway, there's still fun to see tomorrow. "But you, Imperial Tutor Pang, said sincerely that the general is causing a ruckus. Logically speaking, it was you who messed up the matter of announcing the edict. As long as the emperor uses this as an excuse to punish you, you can imagine what will happen to you. This is most likely the Emperor's idea and strategy. He's using you to provoke the general. After all, he doesn't trust you at all because you were too close to Sun Lang in the early years. Feng Yongting was still as silent as a statue. This is the general's multiple choice question for you. He's causing a ruckus. You only have two paths. Pangji said, 1. Stay and don't return to the palace. Stay away from this matter and don't involve yourself in this matter. You can go far away or hide your identity. Anything is fine. 2. Go back. You have to maintain your loyalty, but the Son of Heaven is not a benevolent and magnanimous ruler. This point is undeniable. The truth is in front of you and me. Everyone knows it. What you're about to encounter, even I can imagine it. You can't not understand. So, before he finished speaking, Feng Yongting's body swayed. He broke through the restriction and undid the restraint that Sun Lang had placed on him. So I choose to go back. His old voice was filled with incomparable calm. Pangji paused and then said angrily, "How can you not know what's good for you? Commander of War has already done everything he can." Feng Yongting smiled. "Yes, I know. You don't know," Pangji said in a low voice. "Old Feng, don't be so stubborn. This is the last chance Commander of War is giving you. If you stay, you'll be one of us. If you go back, you'll be an enemy. He won't show any mercy to his enemies. If you go back, not only will you become the Emperor's chess piece, Commander of War will also not hesitate to use you to set up a trap. You're not trying to please either side. Even if you want to die, you can't do this. Do you want to die?" The old eunuch was silent for a moment and then slowly shook his head. "No," he said. "In any case, the life of a eunuch is cheap. Kindness is more important than life." Chapter 1167. Under the moonlight, people returned. When Sun Lang's figure reappeared in front of the gate of Shinto province, the people waiting outside all let out a sigh of relief. The banquet in the manor continued, but a new round of confrontation had already begun silently. Pangji went up to welcome him. He and Sun Lang had a tacit understanding and spoke concisely and comprehensively. The ladies were all somewhat worried, so I persuaded them to go back. This is not a small matter. He smelled the strong scent of alcohol on Sun Lang's body and sighed silently. "First, wash up and tidy up." Sun Lang nodded calmly. Entering through the side door, avoiding the front yard, and passing through corridors and aisles, one of the side rooms had already prepared warm water and a change of clothes. Pangji picked up the clothes, but Sun Lang waved his hand to refuse. He mobilized his yuan qi, and the power of confusion flashed and disappeared. The fierce Zhenrong surged like fire and evaporated the diffusing scent of alcohol. Pangji brought over the hot water and asked, "Marshal, did your trip go smoothly?" This time, Sun Lang did not refuse. He dipped his hands into the water and casually waved them twice. He then said, "Oh, about that, the Emperor never showed himself. I went around the royal palace 3 times and then came back. After all, making a scene outside the palace is one thing. He can pretend he doesn't hear, but rushing into the royal palace in the middle of the night and making a scene is another matter." Pang Ji stood to the side, took out a handkerchief, and handed it over. He said warmly, "Yes, the latter is equivalent to directly stepping on His Majesty's face. If he doesn't mobilize the Imperial Guards, his reputation and face will really plummet." Sun Lang took the towel and wiped his hands. He nodded and said, "That is the reason. If it gets to that point, and it really is not easy to clean up, we can't become the subject of ridicule, right? In any case, my goal has been achieved by going around the royal palace and shouting a few times. After all, those who should have heard it." The sound of music outside was mixed with the sound of drinking and drinking. The candlelight in the room swayed. Sun Lang's face was as calm as water, without the slightest ripple of emotion. Pangji hesitated for a moment and said, "Marshal, Eunuch Feng." Sun Lang froze in the middle of wiping his hands for a moment, then returned to normal. "Back to the palace?" Imperial Tutor Pang said in a low voice, "Yes." Sun Lang slowly wiped his hands. He was very serious and meticulous. After a while, he said softly, "Old Feng won't live for long." Pangji was taken aback. Is this necessary? Given Imperial tutor Pang's intelligence, he could naturally guess why the emperor had sent Feng Yongting to announce the edict. From ancient times until now, the hardest thing to forget was face and relationships. What's more, Sun Lang was a person who cared for his feelings. Whoever treated him well, he would repay them. Sending Feng Yongting would put Sun Lang in a difficult position and make him lose face. If Sun Lang did not agree, Feng Yongting would be incompetent, and the emperor would naturally punish him severely to achieve his goal of provoking Sun Lang. He could even force Sun Lang to make an impulsive mistake. After all, eunuchs were servants of the emperor. It was perfectly justified for the master to beat and scold his servants. Outsiders had no right or position to interfere. Other things aside, how many innocent ghosts were buried in the dry wells in the royal palace? How many palace servants were beaten to death each year? How many tears and blood were shed? No matter how many bones and blood there were, the large royal palace and the supreme imperial power could cover it all. No matter how strong the remonstrant official was, no matter how capable the official was, he could not solve this problem. He could not interfere with the family matters of the emperor. Furthermore, it was only a few lowly eunuchs dying. Who would care? But Feng Yongting is loyal and devoted. Although the emperor is obstinate and self-opinionated, he is not stupid. Right now, he is in need of people. Why would he kill Feng Yongting? Pangji asked in shock. I thought he would at most make old Feng suffer a bit, but Sun Lang's gaze flashed. He slowly clenched his fist and then relaxed it. After a while, he said in an icy and calm tone, "If you can guess what the emperor is thinking, he does not deserve to be the emperor." Pangji didn't know how to respond. He looked at Sun Lang's cold profile and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "If the emperor wants Feng Yongting's life, martially." Sun Lang turned his head and glanced at him. It was just a glance, but it made Pangji swallow the latter half of his words. There's a saying, "The evil you bring on yourself is the hardest to bear." Sun Lang said coldly, "I have already given him many chances, but he wholeheartedly carried out his loyalty. This world is a free world. Everyone is the designer and executor of their own actions. Correspondingly, everyone should have the awareness to take responsibility for their own actions." He turned and left, leaving Pangji with his back to him. "Go out for a drink. Maybe tomorrow, you won't be in the mood to drink anymore." Pangji froze in place. After a moment, perhaps because the night wind was too cold, he suddenly shivered and felt the bone-chilling cold. Sun Lang, on the other hand, returned to the banquet. The girls cast concerned and inquiring gazes, and Sun Lang only smiled in reply. Perhaps it was because Sun Lang's smile was too bewitching and easily made people feel a great sense of security, so everyone was relieved. Just as he sat down, Android and the others crowded over. "Marshal, I heard old Feng is here." Sun Lang smiled. "Yes, I sent him away." Android had obviously drunk a lot. He slurred and said, "This time, it will be a long time. This Feng Yongting is a castrated dog, an inferior person without roots, an idiot without descendants. He has abandoned himself and angered his ancestors. Why bother with such a lowly person? Just send him away with a stick. Why waste your breath on him?" Su Dingfang also drank a lot. He laughed and said, "If you have the guts, say it in front of old Fart Wei." Android said proudly, "Wei Zhongxin doesn't care about money anymore. Why should I be afraid of him? I look down on eunuchs who cut their balls. If they don't have balls, aren't they just trash without balls? Forget about old Fart Wei. He knows the big picture and knows when to advance and retreat. He's on our side. At least he knows what's right and wrong. But who does this Feng Yongting think he is? He has also received Marshall's kindness. He doesn't even want to help either side. He wholeheartedly protects his master. Today, he still dares to come here and sell his face. I look down on people like him. F***K. Who do you think you are?" His voice was especially loud, and he was shouting beside Sun Lang. Almost immediately, he attracted everyone's attention. After everyone heard him, They cheered and applauded. Other than a few people who frowned slightly, the rest obviously agreed with Android's speech. Or rather, they agreed with his disdain and despise towards eunuchs. After all, in this era where martial arts prevailed, where people's hearts were as firm as a rock, everyone was proud of their bravery. They worshipped the beauty of masculinity and strength. Towards eunuchs who took the initiative to give up their male characteristics and the right to reproduce, they naturally despised them. This was the social atmosphere, and Sun Lang only patted Android's shoulder and smiled calmly. In the past, in the army, when people talked about topics related to eunuchs and ridiculed them, Sun Lang would always say something that spoiled the fun. He would say that some people had no choice but to give up their virginity. He would say that determining whether a person was a man or not was not based on whether he had balls, but whether he dared to go into battle and kill the enemy. And so on. He always looked at problems from a different angle. He seemed to have no prejudices in his heart and did not despise any group. His disgust and dissatisfaction were always accurately directed towards a single individual and not based on arbitrary arrogance to judge an entire group. It was as if he was born this way. From a long time ago, this quality and temperament that he unconsciously revealed attracted many people. He would really treat everyone equally and not put on a show or a disguise. He would not hesitate to insult and beat up a lowly soldier. But if the one who made the mistake was a general from a family of generals, he would not hesitate to kick or scold him less because of his background and connections. The Buddhists called this quality the merciful root of Buddha's nature of wisdom, and the scholars believe that this temperament was the most sacred quality of the ancient holy kings. Most of the warriors and generals could not describe this admirable quality in professional terms, but they all knew that this was the main reason why they decided to follow Commander of War. In the Tianyuan era, there were many generals and martial artists, but there was only one Commander of War. But today, things seem to be a little different. After Android used Feng Yongting as an excuse to attack the group of eunuchs, the marshal beside him just patted him on the shoulder and did not refute or reprimand him. This seemed to be just a coincidence. Maybe the Commander of War was in a bad mood, or maybe he drank too much. Probably so. But in the eyes of a few observant people, things did not seem so simple. The banquet lasted until late at night. The martial spirit prevailed in hooded territory, and the civil and military officials of the court were all people with profound cultivation. Drinking wine was like drinking water, and with their profound internal energy, it was very difficult to get drunk. But where there was demand, there was a market. In order to solve the problem of warriors drinking, all kinds of stronger and fiercer wines were developed and brewed. The imperial wine that was drunk tonight was the best of these. In addition, the atmosphere tonight was very good. Many people did not use their internal energy to expel the alcohol and let the mellow alcohol take over their minds. For hours later, they were all lying on the ground. Sun Lang kicked the guy sleeping on the ground next to him. He turned his head and ordered, "In any case, the house is big and there are many rooms. Even the guest rooms in the front yard have been turned over. Let these guys sleep for one night." Wait a moment. A familiar call came from behind him. Miss Zhao tiptoed over two people lying on the ground and jumped to Sun Lang's side. She pursed her lips and smiled. "Today is the opening day of our Shinto province. Of course, we have to make our faces known. In my opinion, we should send the steward of the manor to the various generals' houses to inform them that your family is drunk in our manor. We should ask them if they want to stay the night in Shinto province or if they want to be brought home. Which choice is not important. What is important is to let our people know their faces. Using Sun Lang's words, make their presence known." She looked at Sun Lang's face and smiled. "Is this arrangement okay?" Sun Lang smiled. "Clever. Let's do it like this. Then I'll go make the arrangements." Ms. Zhao stretched out her hands to maintain her balance. She jumped out 1 foot at a time. Sun Lang shook his head and smiled. He approached from the other side. A fragrant wind blew and a handkerchief was handed over. Sun Lang reached out and directly grasped that hand. "Hey," a slightly troubled voice sounded. "I just realized that after we met today, You've been hugging and hugging me. It seems like we're very close. Have we reached this step? Sun Lang was still holding that hand tightly. His voice was a little erratic. He narrowed his eyes and smiled. What are you talking about, Ian Luo? When we were in Mingzhou, we were already so close. Don't talk about hugging and hugging. You were often so lonely that you couldn't sleep at night. You had to ask me to use your chest as a pillow so that you could sleep peacefully. Ian Luo sighed. Ah, now that you mention it, I remember now. Our relationship is only limited to you spouting some lewd words, just like just now. Sun Lang smiled. You're actually not replying? You can't even be bothered to say these teasing words to me. It seems like you're really in a bad mood. Ian Luo asked, Is it related to the time you just went out? Sun Lang shook his head. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Ian Luo say, Don't deal with me. Don't keep us in the dark. The reason I chose to come to the capital was for this. At least listen to it, okay? Sun Lang hesitated for a moment, then smiled bitterly and shook his head. There's nothing to say. I'm just a little sad. Everyone has their own standpoint. I can't get everyone to stand on my side. The battle against the Emperor is very dangerous. People will die. Perhaps many people will die. I do my best to protect those I care about. But sometimes they have their own standpoint and choice. They often ignore my good intentions. Ian Luo asked, But you'll still go save them, won't you? Sun Lang was stunned for a moment, then slowly shook his head. No, I'm not sure, Ian Luo said again. But at that time in Mingzhou, you still went to save Wu Huaishou. You clearly had a fierce argument with him before, as if you were going to break off all relations. Sun Lang sighed. That's not the same, is it? That's not the same. I'm not too sure, but you should know in your heart. Who is good to you? Who is bad to you? Who is worth saving? Who is not worth saving? It's up to you to distinguish. Ian Luo raised his other hand and gently patted Sun Lang's back, as if comforting him. As for me, I'll always be by your side, just like that time in Mingzhou. We'll all help you. Sun Lang forced a smile. Then I really have to thank you, Ian Luo frowned and said, You're not sincere at all. Sun Lang turned around and looked directly into Ian Luo's eyes, revealing a lecherous smile. Do you need me to express my gratitude with practical actions? For example, I've heard a saying that when expressing gratitude, you have to hold the other person's chest tightly and shake it up and down. Go to hell. The short flirting could not hide the trace of confusion and wavering in his heart. Until the night passed. 2 pieces of news came from the imperial palace. The first piece of news was that the emperor, who had recovered from his injuries and was in charge of affairs again, decided to hold a court meeting in advance to accept the congratulations of the officials. He also wanted to check on the state of affairs and the progress of work during this period of time. The second piece of news was that Feng Yongting was imprisoned. Chapter 1168. The next day, outside the gate of Heaven Influence, the officials gathered. The air was filled with the smell of alcohol. Everyone stole glances. Ever since Sun Lang surrendered to Shinto province, his subordinates all looked a little drowsy. It was obvious that they had spent a lot of time last night. The people of Tensei province had also arrived early. Shinsei and Tensei stood side by side in the formation of the Empire's first-rank military officials. Empress glanced at Sun Lang and said, Feng Yongting's situation is not good. If you don't do anything, his situation will be even worse. Sun Lang said calmly, The Emperor destroyed his own wall and chilled the hearts of the royalists. This is exactly what I want. In the eyes of most people, Feng Yongting can't be considered a royalist. He is also very close to you. Empress said coldly, They won't think that the Emperor destroyed his own wall. They will only think that you are cold-blooded and heartless. You don't care about old friends and watch Feng Yongting rush to his death. Sun Lang said disdainfully, Does that dog of yours only know how to do this kind of shady business? Empress was surprised. There is no distinction between yin and yang. There is no taboo in a plan. The result is the most important. The Emperor must have done this kind of shady business because he feels that this plan is feasible and useful. Sun Lang sneered. I will disappoint him." Empress snorted. "Then many people will be disappointed too." The two stopped talking and allowed time to pass. At the right moment, the guards opened the gate of heaven and called the officials in. The officials all looked solemn. Ever since the emperor was assassinated and fell into a coma, the crown prince was appointed as regent. Sun Lang and Li Jinsheng had been jumping up and down in the imperial court. Now that the emperor was in charge again, the imperial court had changed again. Whether the emperor would restore order or the powerful officials would cover the sky with one hand would depend on today's confrontation. The emperor sat in the main hall, and the courtiers danced and bowed to the emperor. With 3 shouts, the greatest and most ancient empire began a new high-level political meeting. The emperor's prestige and power once again radiated to the entire court. Prince Cheng Cheng stood in front of His Majesty's steps. He made eye contact with Sun Lang and quickly looked away. "Idiot!" Sun Lang sneered inwardly. The emperor's gloomy gaze swept across the faces of all the officials. Of course, it was only limited to the first and second-rank magnates. They were the ones who decided the country's political affairs and the key force that kept the monarch's power in check. These people talked about loyalty and ambition, but in their hearts, they were all thinking about their own territory. They were all people without a monarch or father. However, if he wanted to control the country, he would need their assistance and cooperation. This was extremely infuriating. However, what was even more infuriating were the 2 most eye-catching beasts present. One of them was the daughter he was most proud of. He had single-handedly raised her, taught her, nurtured her, and given her the stage to realize her ambitions. He had given her enormous power and trust, and now Li Guangyuan stared at Empress with a gloomy gaze. Empress's expression was indifferent. He was like a statue and had no reaction to anything in the outside world. The emperor's gaze gradually became intense. There was a fanaticism that no one could understand hidden in the depths of his eyes. Soon. Then, his gaze paused for a moment on Sun Lang. His gaze was about to pierce him with needles. Sun Lang could clearly feel this intense hostility and murderous intent. General Shansei suddenly raised his head. The light in his eyes surged. In an instant, there seemed to be countless rays of sword light flowing out. Like 2 white rainbows, they shot toward the emperor's eyes. Li Guangyuan instantly felt that he was on a road in the middle of the night. In front of him, there was a high-beam dog with modified headlights. His corium gold dog eyes immediately blurred, and then tears flowed out. This traitor! The emperor's fists suddenly tightened. His veins popped out. He resisted the urge to roar in court, and urged himself to endure and restrain himself. Now is not the time to start an all-out war with Sun Lang. Be careful not to beat a tiger and be hurt instead. Let's see when you're done. He suppressed the anger and murderous intent in his heart and said lightly, "A few days ago, the traitor caused chaos and tried to assassinate the monarch. I was careless and suffered greatly. I was entangled in bed and had no choice but to hand over the regent to the crown prince and have all the officials work together to assist him. As for today, I have recovered and returned to court. I am here to ask all the officials if the country is peaceful, if the political affairs are harmonious, and if the people are healthy." Most of the gazes fell on the person at the front of the martial arts class. "You have been in bed for less than half a month. What kind of political affairs have you had? During this time, most of the things were caused by those in your family." Sun Lang was also jumping up and down. If it had to be described, it was an internal palace disaster over there. The powerful officials covered the sky with one hand. "You ask yourself," the emperor said lightly. The crown prince, at this moment, Sun Lang stepped into the class and said loudly, "I am here." The atmosphere became awkward. The crown prince's work froze. He looked at Sun Lang with tears in his eyes. His mouth opened and closed, not knowing what to say. In the silence, Sun Lang seemed to have reacted. He touched his head and laughed. "Sorry, I was too excited." "Your Majesty, don't think too much. I am a crown prince's teacher. We are of the same generation. I won't give you the chance to take advantage of me." "Ha!" the emperor said lightly, Go back. Sun Lang waved his hand and said, That won't do. I'm a crown prince's tutor. As a parent, I have the obligation to explain when you check the homework. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince is, after all, a young man. He can only learn some things and help out. The ones who really make the decisions are still us old officials. Li Guangyuan gave a cold humph and said, General Shunsei, are you implying that all the important court matters these days are all from your hands? Taking all the important court matters into one's own hands. This was the meaning of abusing power. Since ancient times, many powerful and treacherous officials have been killed by the emperor or his political opponents. This was the biggest taboo and topic of discussion for the officials. Normally, if the emperor said, Are you abusing your power? The official would be sweating profusely and plead guilty again and again in fear and trepidation. He would even resign and beg for a corpse. However, Sun Lang was not like this. He proudly puffed out his chest and said, Yes, your majesty, most of it is like this. I'm still young. For such a loyal and capable comrade like you, the burden on your shoulders can be increased. After all, there's a teacher who has taught me since I was young to benefit the country and to live and die for it. The emperor laughed coldly and silently. His entire body emitted a low pressure. He said, Oh, since that is the case, then please tell me about the important court matters these days. I really want to hear about how the Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince has governed the country for me. As you wish. Sun Lang cupped his hands and said loudly, Thanks to your majesty's trust, the Crown Prince is cautious and conscientious, and the officials are working hard to assist him. The court is now operating normally. If you want me to summarize, then I have a sentence to report. The current situation of the empire, in my opinion, is progressing in a good direction amid stability. But there are also changes amid stability. The emperor put on a fake smile and said, Since it is improving, why are there changes? Sun Lang answered smoothly, This depends on the course of history. Although the current court is operating normally, the situation of the country has always been the result of long-term and short-term, internal and external factors. In other words, there are some bad variables that come from the karma that was previously planted. The cold smile on the emperor's face became stronger. Karma? Tell me, what karma is it? Sun Lang spread out his hands and said, I don't know. Your majesty has forgotten that I have been pitiful, weak, and helpless these 2 years outside. How would I know what karma your majesty has planted? But you see, your majesty, my 2 years of wandering outside is actually one of the internal factors that led to the current state of the country. The two's answers were sharp, and they were both mocking each other in a roundabout way. Hearing this, the officials held their breaths and did not dare to breathe loudly. They were afraid that Sun Lang would say something like, You son of a B****, how dare you plot against me in the Great Barren Mountain? The historian in charge of recording the court meeting was trembling with fear. The pen in his hand was thousands of pounds heavy. The emperor's expression became colder and sterner. If you don't know the karma, why do you think there are changes in the court? Where are the changes? Sun Lang said proudly, I have eyes, a brain, and a heart of loyalty. The shortcomings of the empire are already in my skin. If you don't say anything, then I will say it alone. Look at the imperial capital. I've only been back for a month, but there's a constant stream of big and small things. The demon traces of the Copper Sparrow Terrace are looming. Qi Lianyan died an unnatural death. The late emperor showed his divinity. Mu Yao came back to life. His majesty was assassinated, and Ri Yao went crazy. Why has our country become like this? I can't help but fall into deep thought. Why has it become like this? Sun Lang's eyes were full of tears because he loved this country deeply. But his affectionate questioning did not lead to deep thought. Instead, it caused the emperor to laugh coldly. Li Guangyuan's cold laughter echoed in the Golden Hall, like a malicious night owl. His laughter made people shudder. Sun Lang gradually raised his eyebrows and asked calmly, Is what I said very funny? The emperor's laughter gradually stopped. He nodded and said, What a bunch of twisted logic. Sun Lang, the Copper Sparrow Terrace was your private army. Qi Lianyan died in front of you. No one saw the late emperor show his divinity. It was also your first time seeing Mu Yao come back to life. As for Wei Shihe going crazy, it was also because you acted wildly outside the gate of heaven influence and kidnapped the Water Sword Saint. Do you have any explanation for this? At the end, Li Guangyuan's voice and expression were already stern. Swords were drawn in the massive golden hall, and a somber air filled the air. The Sovereign King's stern questions were like heavy hammers that slammed into everyone's hearts. Under countless gazes and in this tense and somber atmosphere, the Divine Strategies General shrugged his shoulders. Is it my fault? His tone was very innocent, and so was his expression. The Emperor flew into a rage. Sun Lang, what do you mean? Then what does your Majesty mean? Sun Lang's tone also rose. I am involved in all the major events in the capital. It only shows that I am a great official who is brave and does not avoid arrows. I always rush to the front line and put the safety of the country and the country in my heart. That is why I have broken the evil plans time and time again and prevented the crisis from spreading further. He took a step forward and said passionately, if it were not for my decisive actions, the Copper Sparrow Terrace would still be a place for evil. And your Majesty, as the biggest owner of the Copper Sparrow Terrace, is like a shadow under a lamp. You do not know that there is a shadow of the sky demon lurking in the beautiful place. What kind of shame is this? My actions have saved your Majesty's face, so that when the matter is exposed, you will not be embarrassed. The Emperor slammed the table and stood up. He shouted, "How dare you? A bunch of nonsense." Sun Lang also shouted, "Your Majesty, forget it. All the scoundrels on the streets of the capital know that you have the majority of the shares in the Copper Sparrow Terrace. You are a brothel's procuress emperor." These words were too provocative. Everyone was in an uproar. The Emperor was so angry that his hair stood up and his whole body trembled. Rebellion! Rebellion! Where are the Imperial Guards? Sun Lang said proudly, "Your Majesty, you are exaggerating. Saying such words has chilled the hearts of the brothers. It is not that I am looking down on you, but if I had rebelled, would you still be alive?" With a bang, the Emperor kicked over the dragon table. The court was in chaos. Chaotic voices immediately sounded. Some officials who wanted to show their loyalty wanted to come out and reprimand Sun Lang, but their mouths were covered by the Shen's minions and pulled to the side. The royalist officials reprimanded them harshly. Android and the others also scolded each other. Most of the important officials were unperturbed and watched the fire burn across the river. At this time, the situation in the court was as chaotic as the Western Parliament on Earth. Sun Lang, on the other hand, stared at the Emperor and continued to attack. "Your Majesty, you have just recovered from your injuries, and you want to find trouble with me. Don't you feel guilty? You still have the face to mention Lingmu Li. If I had not given Lingmu Li a fierce blow that night and injured him, I'm afraid you would have been cut into pieces by the eternal sword Qi on the spot. Not only did you not give me an indirect protector medal, but you actually want to slander me. Your Majesty, where is the appearance of a wise emperor?" The Emperor said sternly, "Where are the officials? Are you just going to watch this bastard roar at the court and disrespect the Emperor? Where is my son, Prince Cheng Cheng? Where is my daughter, Tensei?" His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince gritted his teeth and walked down the stairs to Sun Lang. Just as he was about to speak, he was pulled away by the Imperial tutor. Neymar rolled out and fell to the side, motionless. Empress Tensei did not speak at all. "The officials are here," Sun Lang said sternly. "If you don't understand, I will spit on you. Your Majesty is aggressive and treats me like dirt. I don't want to take it, so I have to be straightforward. Your Majesty, you know that the world is not ruled by the Emperor alone, but by the Emperor and the officials. You have to be polite to your partners." The Emperor picked up the objects that had rolled to the ground and threw them at Sun Lang's face. A strong gust of wind blew against Sun Lang's face, and the force behind the throw was quite strong. Sun Lang only casually pushed, and the thrown objects naturally changed direction. Moreover, The force behind the throw was several times stronger, and it smashed toward the faces of Wen Quanfu and the other royalist ministers. He blocked them and shouted, "Okay, I thought that you had just recovered from your injuries, so I'll let you be happy for a few days. But today you did it, so don't blame me for doing it 15 times. I will now tell you what I said to Empress during the court meeting. Your Majesty, I want to ask you something today. If you can't answer, you will be the retired emperor." Chapter 1169. The imperial court was boiling like a pot of paste. It was too exciting. The dignified first-grade pillar state, Shinsei General, was openly cursing at the supreme son of heaven. "Old Madam Emperor, are you still alive? I'll let you be the retired emperor," and so on. The scene was extremely exciting. It was truly an explosive moment that had never happened since the founding of the Hutu Empire. According to common sense, when such a disgraceful thing happened in the imperial court, the ministers should try to stop it. However, the ministers in the imperial court had probably never seen such an effect in their lives. Their desire to watch the show was unprecedented, and they didn't have any urgent thoughts of stopping or interfering. After all, Sun Lang's performance could be considered restrained. He only moved his mouth, not his hands. If they really fought, it would be a disgraceful thing. No matter what, the emperor was the emperor. He couldn't be beaten up by the ministers. If the cursing turned into a brawl, then everyone would come forward to stop it. After all, in such an imperial country, protecting the dignity of the imperial family was protecting the joint authority of the ministers. But if it was just a quarrel, then so be it. In any case, no one would die. Moreover, it was super cool. Normally, even if there were ministers who disregarded their dignity and angrily rebuked the emperor, they would still be polite. When had there ever been such coarse words like, "Your AF asterisk king old madam"? Sun Lang had roared out all the words that they wanted to curse, but were too embarrassed to do so. This was the voice of the people. Come, come, come. You want to slander me?" Sun Lang rolled up his sleeves and shouted, "You F asterisk king asked me? I should be the one asking you. Qi Lianyan is a piece of trash. Which son of a bitch made him the fire-radiant sword sage? Tell me, didn't Ling Muley die? How come you're alive again? Huh? I still haven't settled the score with you for Bai Yue. Don't you know in your heart?" The emperor roared, "Court is dismissed. Court is dismissed." Sun Lang shouted, "Dismiss your mother. You've forgotten the pain after the scar healed, and you still dare to fight with me? I am the general of heaven origin. I fought the sky demon and saved the country. Your Majesty, what is the meaning of rebellion? Fuck, 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 fuck. We're going to shed all pretense of cordiality, just like that." All the onlookers were horrified, and even Empress was shocked. No matter how wrong Li Guangyuan was, he was still the supreme emperor of the Huda territory after all, and he was also the wise emperor who drove away the sky demon. His prestige and reputation were extremely high. Now that Sun Lang had launched an attack, could it be that he had the confidence to completely overthrow Li Guangyuan without suffering any backlash? Traitor! Traitor! Li Guangyuan was so angry that his whole body was trembling. "Do you really think that no one can control you, an ignorant man who goes against the world without a ruler or father? I'll return the same words to you," Sun Lang said harshly. "You are a selfish, vicious, and exploitative tyrant. Do you really think that you can plunder and do whatever you want in this world? The sun is bright and the universe is clear. If you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. Everything you have done will be exposed one by one under the sun and in front of the world sooner or later." He suddenly turned around, waved his sleeves, and looked at the officials present. His voice was sonorous and powerful. "Today is the imperial court meeting, and all the officials are present. I am the general of Shinsei, Sun Lang. I propose to interrogate Hikari Kinsei Wei Shiha in order to find out what happened before he went crazy. I will also discuss the cause of Mu Yao's death in the Great Barren Mountain to clarify the truth and eliminate evil." The emperor was furious. "Sun Lang, this imperial court is not for you to give orders." Sun Lang looked back, raised his eyebrows, and sneered. "Your Majesty, you are obstructing me in every way possible. Is it because you have a guilty conscience?" The emperor was furious. "I rule the world and rule the Huda territory with the way of tyrant. I take care of everything personally, and I am worthy of being the ancestor of heaven and earth. How can I have a guilty conscience? You disrespect the emperor, have no respect for your elders, roar at the imperial court, ignore the laws, and have evil intentions. Today, I will kill you, you traitor. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext." Sun Lang pointed at him and said, "On the other hand, you, as the son of heaven, have privately bestowed the divine artifact and raised the eagle dog. Qi Lianyan is just a mediocre person. Without your approval, how can he control the divine sword? Ling Muli faked his death to escape in the Great Barren Mountain. Without your approval, how can he dare to hide in the dark? Bai Yue has been a senior official for 3 emperors, the owner of the Taibai Gold Radiant Sword. Why did he stay in seclusion for 3 years and become crazy? Wei Wangshu, the owner of the Solar Sword, was taken advantage of by evil spirits. You can't escape the blame for this." He took a step forward and said sternly, "Emperor, answer me. What are you planning?" Silence reigned in the Golden Palace. The two of them had changed from harsh insults to heart-wrenching accusations. The officials' minds were like wheels as they digested Sun Lang's accusations and judged whether these words were true or false. The emperor's face was as calm as water. He stood on the jade steps in front of the imperial court, enduring all kinds of gazes from all directions. He looked at Sun Lang, and Sun Lang looked at him. Their gazes met in the air. Killing intent burst forth. This was actually a game of chess, a battle. There were attacks and defenses, advances and retreats. In a confrontation, both sides had to advance bravely, but also have to defend flawlessly. For Sun Lang, he had the initiative to attack. From the fact that the emperor had sent Feng Yongting as a matchmaker last night, it could be seen that the emperor, who was unwilling to be left out, was preparing a new round of counterattacks. He didn't know the emperor's thoughts and goals, so the way to deal with it was naturally to take the initiative to attack and make the emperor tired of defending. Just like now, he had taken the initiative to stir up trouble in the imperial court and launched an ultimate-like attack. But this attack and accusation had a strategy, because the emperor was an opponent that could not be underestimated. When confronting him, one had to be wary of his counterattack before death. To deal with this kind of prey, one had to be patient. One had to constantly attack and harass, and one had to let the emperor gradually accumulate injuries and fatigue. Like using a soft knife to cut flesh, one had to moisten the emperor's body and silently make him hurt, make him bleed, and slowly die. So even though his words were like knives, and he constantly accused the emperor, he avoided the core part of the emperor's crime, the emperor's dream of immortality. This would make the emperor completely abandon his last hope. At the same time, the emperor also displayed a complete tacit understanding. Even if he hated Sun Lang to the bone, he would not easily make public the crime of Sun Lang slaughtering 300,000 soldiers in the Great Desolate Mountain, injuring the sword spirit of the Huda sword, and destroying the empire's ability to create an imperial army. This would cause unrest in the country, cause the country to sway, and cause the emperor to be at a moral disadvantage. This was something that the emperor did not want to see. Based on the above two tacit understandings, the two restrained themselves and fought fiercely. It was also for this reason that Sun Lang could be at ease and boldly attack the city and seize the territory. But the emperor suddenly revealed a cruel and cold smile. Sun Lang's heart sank. Then he heard the emperor let out a long sigh. "I am the emperor. What could I possibly be plotting?" His voice was full of fatigue and helplessness. "Everything I do is for the sake of this country." He slightly raised his head and looked at the majestic ceiling of the Golden Palace. "This is the country of the Leaf family. Father gave it to me. I have protected it from the claws of the Sky Demon, and I will continue to protect it until 100 years later. the ministers quieted down and listened to the emperor's sudden inner voice. The emperor lowered his head and looked at the faces of all the ministers. He said indifferently, "I admit that the reason why Qi Lianyan was able to wield the sacred fire sword was because of me. I also admit that the reason why Bai Yue spent the last 3 years of his life in Qin province was also because of me. But I know nothing about Lingmu Li. As for Hikari Kinsei's sudden madness, I was in a coma at that time. What could I have done?" Sun Lang felt a little uneasy. The emperor had obviously made his move. What was his intention? Although he couldn't figure it out, he knew that he couldn't let the emperor do as he pleased. Wei Shi's madness will be known after the trial. Whether Lingmu Li has anything to do with your majesty, we can also use evidence to prove it. Sun Lang asked boldly. But Qi Lianyan was crowned as a monkey, and Bai Yue died unjustly. Your majesty, why did you do this? You must give the world an explanation. Explanation. The emperor let out a bleak and cold laugh. Ha, what an explanation! An unforgettable hatred shot out from his eyes. He stared at Sun Lang, his expression like that of a venomous snake. He said in a hoarse voice, "Sun Lang, don't you know why we are doing this? Have you forgotten all the good things you've done? Do you think you can threaten me? Do you think I don't dare to say it?" Not good. Sun Lang's expression changed abruptly. Then he heard the emperor's hoarse voice. The reason I bestowed the sacred fire sword at Qi Lianyan and discussed a top-secret matter with Old Bai's esteemed grandfather was all for the sake of debugging the imperial weapon and reverse engineering the manufacturing process of the imperial weapon. The reason I spent so much effort and even sacrificed Old Bai's life was all because of you, Sun Lang. You destroyed the Empire's ability to produce the imperial army. You shook the foundation and future of Hutu. You traitor! You traitor! Tom was silent for a moment. Then there was an uproar. Cries of shock, questions, astonishment, incredulity, disbelief, and all sorts of emotions gushed out like a tsunami. Even the great leaders of the imperial court, who had been through many storms, had already changed their expressions. At the center of the storm, Sun Lang met the emperor's eyes with an indifferent expression. Li Guangyuan's eyes were filled with ecstasy and madness. Finally, a victory. You didn't see this coming, did you, Sun Lang? You thought I had scruples and did not dare to disclose this secret. Once the news that Hutu lost the manufacturing ability of the imperial army was spread, the country would be shaken, the people would be shaken, and the world would be in chaos. Even the 4 countries that were eyeing us covetously would have other thoughts. You thought I was worried about this? You thought I was worried about this? You were too naive. If I could succeed and become the son of heaven, my lifespan would be endless. I would have plenty of time to pacify the world and govern the country. If I failed, defeat and death would be inevitable. After I died, I would not care about the flood. Therefore, Jean set up this trap to lure you into taking the initiative to attack and catch you off guard. You boast of your wisdom, but you still can't predict people's hearts. Just like 3 years ago, you couldn't predict that Jean would make a move on you before Jean won. 3 years later, you also couldn't predict that Jean would rather cause chaos in the country to pacify a traitor like you. This is the emperor. This is the emperor. Only someone like me can be the emperor. Only someone worthy of being the emperor. And you prepare to die. Li Guangyuan's eyes flashed with cruel killing intent. After a long period of planning and patience, this sovereign of the empire had finally bared his fangs. Chapter 1170. Austere. There was also an extremely strange silence. Those gathered here were the most resourceful elites of the empire, the most resourceful and capable people of the empire. The administrative center of the empire gathered the world's best politicians and strategists. Most of them had gone through the baptism of the Tianyuan War and had psychological qualities and shrewdness that ordinary people could not reach. However, what happened today still shook their hearts and minds, and they were indescribably shocked. No one would have thought that the first court session after the emperor recovered from his injury would result in such an intense clash of tit for tat, and even tearing off all pretenses of cordiality. The forcefulness of their attitudes, the intensity of their words, and the swiftness of their methods were as if they wanted to get rid of each other once and for all in this court session. This was what caught people off guard the most. It should be known that the essence of political games was compromise, layout, forbearance, and patience. Throughout the history of the empire, those classic political confrontations all contained such wisdom. This was the inevitable product of a mature and stable political system. The officials had been the bureaucrats of the later Earth for a long time and had been immersed in such an environment. They abided by the rules of the game and were used to using it as the criterion for their behavior. When the time was not right, they would patiently wait. Even if the enemy was right in front of them, they would talk and laugh calmly and peacefully. When the time was right, they would strike like a thunderbolt. They would show no mercy, leave no future trouble, and leave no possibility for the political enemy to make a comeback. The normal rules of the game were undoubtedly like this. But the two men in this confrontation had never been the ones who abided by the rules. Sun Lang was a visitor from Earth. He was born with resentment and returned to the capital with the intention of revenge. He wanted justice and did not mind smashing the rotten and boring rules. So he would not be bound by any rules or consensus. Li Guangyuan was an ambitious monarch. He was obsessed with the dream of immortality and did not care about anything. His huge ambition gradually distorted his mind and made him cold and indifferent. He already saw himself as a god. The seed of immortality in the future did not need to abide by the boring rules of mortals. Once he achieved immortality, with the blessing of endless life, he could reshape any rules he wanted to reshape. So he would not stop because of any concerns. So, the most intense confrontation since the establishment of the empire began. What was revealed was a top secret that could shake the foundation of the empire. The emperor said that the imperial army's production technology had been destroyed by Sun Lang. If this was true, it meant that the foundation of this country would collapse, and the greatest support that the Hutu Empire relied on to suppress the world would no longer exist. This was an earth-shattering event. The emperor had publicly announced this fact in the imperial court. There was no impenetrable wall in the world. The hundreds of ministers present all heard it clearly. There was no way to block the news. Once it was leaked, the empire would definitely be caught in an uproar. Needless to say, the people's hearts would be shaken. The aristocratic families would have their own ideas, and the sects and schools would be disloyal. Those countries that had always regarded Hutu as their biggest imaginary enemy would definitely take action. This was simply a heaven-sent opportunity that they had been dreaming of. More importantly, after losing the ability to create an imperial army, the country's morale would plummet. Hutu had relied on the imperial army for too long. The impact of the incident would certainly be far-reaching. It might even shake the foundation of the glorious and ancient country. Why would the emperor do this? Why do you want to announce this publicly? With countless doubts and incomprehension, the gazes of the crowd gradually fell on Sun Lang. There was surprise, shock, hostility, and confusion. After all, this crime was far too great. It was so great that the crowd did not feel anything for the time being, so they did not immediately vent their anger and loathing. In this strange and indescribable silence, Sun Lang sneered in disdain. He indifferently said, "This crime is far too great. This son cannot bear it. Destroying the imperial army's production technology? According to His Majesty's words, could it be that I, son, have secretly snuck into the imperial palace in the past 2 years and blew up the sacred artifact monitoring facility? While I was at it, I burned all the manuals and copies that recorded the production process of imperial weapons." The officials were all shaken and agreed that this was indeed the case. The emperor's accusation was far too shocking. The imperial army was the foundation of the empire. The imperial army's production technology had always been a top secret, so secret that even the important officials of the empire knew nothing about it. The Imperial Army's secrecy and protection of the Imperial Army's production technology even exceeded that of the Emperor himself. After all, the former was indeed more important than the latter. Putting everything else aside, the Sky Demon had racked his brains, and the four great countries had gone through all sorts of twists and turns. These enemies of Hoodoo had tried their best to find out the secrets of the Imperial Army. Unfortunately, they had all come up with nothing. Now, you're telling me that Sun Lang single-handedly destroyed the production technology of Hutu's Imperial Army? Are you kidding me? If it was so easy, were the Sky Demon and the four great countries all trash? Emperor Sunran sneered and said, Sun Lang, don't pretend to be confused. The officials do not know the secrets of the Imperial Army's production. Do you not know either? The core of the Imperial Army's production is not the secret methods recorded in the books, nor is it the ingenious godly equipment, but the sword of Hutu from the outer space. All the Imperial Army is produced using the sword of Hutu as a template, and you almost destroyed the sword of suppressing the star? At this point, Li Guangyuan's voice was already fierce. Incomparable resentment, fury, and murderous intent were neither acting nor faking, but the genuine outpouring of his true feelings. That was because not only had Sun Lang massacred the Empire's troops in the confrontation on the Great Barren Mountain, but he had also defeated the powerful ancestral demon spirit in the ultimate confrontation in the spiritual world, causing the spirit of the sacred sword to fall into a deep slumber. The sword of the Earth Hutu was severely damaged, and the future of the Empire was almost wiped out. For the past 2 years, before the devil woke up, Li Guangyuan was trapped in nightmares almost every night. He either dreamed of the scene of Sun Lang coming back for revenge, or the tragic scene of the capital being attacked by the barbarians, dying at the hands of a traitor and becoming the ruler of a fallen country. These two endings were the ultimate nightmare of every ruler. And such an ending seemed to be created by him. He had despaired, cursed, enraged, and regretted. The Battle of Great Desolate Mountain had given the Emperor an incomparably huge blow, even distorting his soul. Today, he had publicly rebuked Sun Lang for his crimes, venting out the anger and resentment that had been buried in his heart. It was truly an expression of his true feelings, without any pretense at all. He roared, "You are a great traitor of the country, a traitor for thousands of years. Even if you're cut 1,000 times, 10,000 times, and suffer all the torture in the world, it will not be able to offset your crimes. I want to kill you. I want to kill you. I want to see you die with my own eyes." Vicious curses and resentful eyes. The Emperor was in a state of madness. His resentment did not seem to be fake and was very convincing. The officials became more and more confused. They all looked at Sun Lang, waiting for him to refute. They did not easily express their stance, nor did they ask questions. Instead, they quietly watched all this. At this point, they all knew that this was an extremely important moment. The outcome of today's Imperial Court meeting would completely change the fate of the country. For this reason, everyone was waiting patiently. They were waiting for the outcome of the confrontation, waiting for an answer that would satisfy everyone. But many people had already begun to secretly raise their guard. They were on guard against Sun Lang suddenly launching an attack. And Sun Lang still looked calm. He had no intention of making a move, at least not now. Could he directly charge up and chop the Emperor to pieces? Yes. Could it be done? Impossible. If he killed the Emperor now, it would be called perishing together. If he assassinated the ruler, what would the onlooking officials think? What would they do? What would the world think? More importantly, the Emperor was just a puppet. The real enemy was still the devil ancestor hiding behind the scenes. If the Emperor died, the devil would inevitably go into hiding. It would become the most difficult enemy to deal with. Perhaps the Emperor and the devil had also calculated this, and that was why they launched an attack at this moment. They were betting that Sun Lang would follow the bet and fight, and not directly kick over the table. In other words, although at this moment they almost shed all pretense of cordiality, the last tacit understanding still existed. Sun Lang would not directly rush up to kill the emperor. The devil would not take the opportunity to attack Yin Luo and the others, because this pair of real opponents had a more important purpose than destroying the enemy. So, Sun Lang sneered and said, "Shameless. Shameless. Despicable. Disgusting." He raised his head and looked at the ruler of this country with contempt. "Li Guangyuan, I promise you will be the most shameful ruler of this country, and forever nailed to the pillar of shame in history." He called the ruler by his name in front of the palace. Achievement achieved. No one cared about Sun Lang's rudeness, or rather, if the emperor's accusation was true, then compared to the great crimes that Sun Lang had committed, this kind of small matter was simply not a big deal. Everyone was waiting for Sun Lang's defense, or some other speech that was even worse. "I destroyed the Earth Luminary's sacred sword," Sun Lang said indifferently. "What kind of joke is this? I left the Earth Luminary's sacred sword in the Great Desolate Mountain. If I wanted to destroy the sacred sword, then why would I leave it behind? Wouldn't it be better to just throw it away in a place where no one is around, so that you won't be able to find it for the rest of your lives? Emperor, did you use the Earth Luminary's sacred sword to do some shameful experiments, destroy the sacred sword, and then frame me for it?" At this point, he looked back at the officials and said casually, "Oh, right. Let me introduce myself. I am Sun Lang, the sword master of the Earth Luminary's sacred sword, the former kind. 2 years ago, that nuisance sword saint of the nation paraded through the streets of the imperial capital was a fake. It was me who killed all the sky demon in the Great Desolate Mountain." The crowd was in an uproar again. Big news came one after another. Emperor Sun Ran said, "Who else but you are the most shameless person in the world? The sword saint of the nation is the sword saint of the nation. Since when did you impersonate him? In the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain, it was clearly you who launched a sudden attack on the sword saint of the nation. In the end, you were wounded and fled. All the sword saints present saw this with their own eyes. Why don't we call Wei Shihe and Wei Wangshu here, and let the two of you confront each other in court, and ask the two sword saints of the sun and moon who were there personally, whether you and the sword saint of the nation are the same person." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.